sir. Good to see you again.
We'll see you.
All right.
Need water? Okay. Should I get in your folder? Should be in your folder. Is it there? It's okay. Before I call the meeting to order, we're going to put some additional chairs behind the board for people that are presenting only because of the overflow area right now. And then as if people choose to leave, then they can move someplace else. But in order for the process to flow more smoothly, Christy Lanier Robinson has suggested putting some chairs back here, but we're going to go on and start the meeting. I just wanted to explain what was going on before we did that. And I would ask that we make sure that we keep all the exits clear. Because of the fire code regulations, there should be easy access to all the exits while we're in the process of having the meeting tonight. I appreciate your cooperation with that. I'd like to welcome you to the March 24th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. At 4 p.m. today, the board held a work session to discuss magnet schools, and at 5:30, the board attended a KSBA in-service training session on school board member ethics. We are going to have a moment of silence, and then after that, we're going to be led with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag by the students from Stewart Middle School, who will stand in their place. And then after that, Ms. Westland will read our vision statement. So if we could have a moment of silence, please. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Westland.
Thank you, Chair Porter. I'd like to say to the group that our vision statement here is that all JCPS students graduate prepared to reach their full potential and contribute to our society throughout life.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the March 10 minutes? Mr. Brady, second. Mr. Hadaway, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Recognitions and resolutions. Ms. Terry Robinson.
Thank you. Dr. Hargens, Board Chair Diane Porter, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education. This evening, we are proud to join with other school districts from across the nation to celebrate Music in Our Schools Month The 2014 national theme is Music Makes Me. The purpose of this national observance is to draw attention to the importance of music education in our schools and communities, as well as to gain and promote the support of teachers, parents, students, and the community to advocate for music education in schools across the nation. It is also a great opportunity to highlight the talent of exemplary music educators who teach comprehensive sequential music education through concerts, lessons, public performances, and advocacy activities. Tonight, in celebration of Music in Our Schools Month, the Stewart Middle School Band performed in the lobby area prior to the Jefferson County Board of Education meeting. Board member Chuck Hadaway, please come forward to thank the Stewart Middle School Band and their director, Michelle Gifford. Joining in the recognition is their principal, Renee Bledsoe. Please come forward, students and their director.
We need y'all to make 2 rows. Good. Guys, can you all make a second row? Hey, guys.
Thank you, students. We have some very proud parents here tonight. If the parents of the Stewart Middle School Band can please stand and be recognized. Next, we are very proud to bestow recognition upon Southern High School for receiving accreditation from the National Institute for Metalworking Skills for its machine tool and die program. The accreditation is the result of rigorous examination determining that Southern High School's machine tool and die program meets the quality standards by the National Institute on behalf of the nation's precision manufacturing industry. The purpose of the NIMS National Accreditation is to advance the quality of training programs as part of a national endeavor to build and maintain a globally competitive workforce, in addition to providing career opportunities to employees. Board member Linda Duncan, please come forward to congratulate teacher Joe Simon and principal Bryce Hibbert. Thank you. Finally, we have the honor of recognizing Jean Ann Meredith, teacher at Moore Traditional School, for being selected as a Clays Noble Educator of Distinction. A student at her school nominated Jean Ann for the award, which recognizing outstanding educators who make a positive difference in the lives of their students. These distinguished educators are great role models who make significant contributions to their students' academic careers and leadership, which has a lasting impression on student lives. The Clays Noble Educator of Distinction is a special program of the National Society of High School Scholars, which honors educators worldwide. NSHS encourages young people around the world to strive for excellence and to embrace their responsibility for world betterment as our future world leaders and innovators. Board member Carolyn Haddad, please come forward to congratulate Ms. Meredith. And joining in the recognition is the counselor, Scott Mitchell. Please come forward. Dr. Hargens, and members of the Jefferson County Board of Education, this concludes our recognitions for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. At this time, we have recognized the parents, I believe, that are here, so we want to say thank you to parents, to students, and to staff that were recognized tonight for your fine work. I'll accept a motion to receive the recognitions. Ms. Haddad, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. At this point, we allow the students to leave to work on homework, if that's what you choose to do, and the adults to leave to choose on what you'd like to do. So thank you very much, and thank you for your outstanding work.
Could.
They'll let them out. Take a minute.
There is a door right here.
I knew I'd spill that
It's
water.
crowded back there, though. They can't. They're not going to be able to get through because
We're going to go and do reservations and get on with
it's real crowded in there, too.
See if they want to go out this way.
Go to the door over here.
This one over here, let them go out.
There's an exit.
Just have to ask them to be able to
It
get
does. Yeah. You need to escape quick.
Oh, okay.
I had my
Yeah.
Tonight we have 3 discussion items on the agenda: the Magnet Schools and Review Program, the report on alternative school status and recommendations, and of course the Board of Education discussion agenda planning calendar. For the last several meetings we have entertained a motion to move those discussion items up in an effort to allow staff and others to have an opportunity to do that at the front part of the agenda. So if there's a motion for that tonight, I will entertain the motion.
Brady Smith.
Mr. Brady?
Yeah, I'll second it.
I make a motion that we do that.
And it's 7A and 7B.
That we move
right?
those items 7A and 7B up to the front of our calendar.
Okay, and
front of our agenda.
just for the recording, that we're waiving Board Policy 1.45, Board Meeting Agenda, to amend the agenda to move those 2 items up. All those in favor of moving those up on the agenda, please indicate by voting. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. So at this time, we will go to the discussion items. And the first item, Magnet Schools and Program Review, but we have some speakers tonight about that, so we're going to go to the speakers first, please. Our first speaker tonight is Reverend David Snarden. Reverend Snarden, please come to the microphone or the table. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound 1 time. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. Welcome, Reverend Snarden.
My name is Reverend David Snarden. I am pastor of Joshua Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church located in West Louisville, and I'm also co-president of CLOUT. We all know that JCPS is facing a school discipline crisis. The 100 people of faith behind me, parents, grandparents, teachers, and JCPS students, know the crisis because our children live it every day. Now, we spoke before you last May, and since we were here, there has been more urgency on the federal, state, and local level on this issue. And we have not seen enough movement on the district's part. CLOUT has been in contact with the Office of Civil Rights team, working on the JCPS investigation, and have been asked to send a report of our research and our history. We want to send to the federal government a report that teachers are getting support and are getting training to respond to incidents in the classroom, that there is substantive engagement between JCPS and the community, and that JCPS is moving away from ineffective, harmful, and racially biased zero-tolerance policies. But we cannot send such a report at this time. As my mother once told me, action speaks louder than words. And we need real action from you before we can report any progress. We have attended all four of the district Code of Conduct revision meetings, and we now know that not only has the phrase restorative practice been inserted without the promise of real training, the topic of race has not been mentioned once. This omission is deeply disturbing, especially in light of your recent release of the equity scorecard back in November, and the federal announcement in January warning school districts to address racial bias in their discipline policies. So today, after repeated letters and calls from parents and clergy, we again invite you, Superintendent Hargens, to attend our Nehemiah Assembly April the 9th. And we again encourage Dr. Hargens and the school board leadership to take the necessary steps to keep our students and children safe in school. We will call Dr. Hargens. We will call you in the morning at 10 a.m. to confirm your attendance at the assembly and preferably set a pre-meeting. We will be in touch with the Office of Civil Rights at 10 a.m. on April the 10th, the day following our assembly, to make a report on these issues. This is the time for action for our children and our community. We look forward to your leadership.
Our next speaker is Sarah Tahiri. Sarah Tahiri, I hope I'm not mispronounced. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Tahiri. And I'm a junior from DuPont Manual High School, and I'm in the HSU program there. And a few hours ago, I was alerted that there is a possible elimination of my magnet. And I would just like to state that the elimination of HSU as a magnet would completely demolish the unique identity of the school and would simply cause a downfall in test scores and our national recognition. HSU is actually the most competitive magnet to gain entry to, because the other magnets have more specific requirements, like if you have some kind of talent in singing or maybe you're really strong in math, then you can gain access. But HSU, you have to be an all-around, completely academically successful student. And this has to be supported by superb success in school and superb letters of recommendation from prior instructors. Also, high school university is also the most rigorous magnet at our school. It requires 4 advanced placement courses simply to graduate. Now, 4 AP classes is equivalent to a freshman semester in college. And remember, these kids are simply high schoolers, and they're willing to take this on themselves and be successful. And no other magnet has this requirement. In addition to this, HSU also has other required classes, such as a computer applications course, 3 or more years of a language, and the humanities class, while other magnets can stick to their required classes but not have to deal with the 4 AP classes on top of this. And the elimination of HSU will terminate DuPont Manual's national ranking. And now DuPont Manual, as you know, is one of the top 100 high schools in the entire country. And a big reason of this is they take into account of AP scores and ACT scores. And HSU students are extremely successful in both of these areas. On the ACT, we are extremely successful because of the academic rigor that we've been exposed to from those AP classes that HSU requires us to take. In addition, we'll no longer be nationally ranked because these AP classes, the majority of them are because of that requirement. And so us taking them is what brings up those scores and what causes us to be recognized for it. And in short, basically, just removing HSU will only cause JCPS to no longer have the high school with the highest ACT composite average in the state and a nationally ranked high school. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Joanne Tahiri. Joanne?
I'm just going to defer to my daughter and just cancel me, or do I have to talk?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for supporting your daughter and being here tonight. Our next speaker is Bennett Knox. Bennett Knox.
Hi, Dr. Hargens, Chair Porter, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak for a few minutes this evening. I'd like to express my hope that JCPS will work with interested parents and community leaders to establish a middle and high school Spanish immersion pathway in Louisville similar to what is succeeding in other communities across the state and the country. I have the pleasure of knowing some of you through my work as head of Jefferson Memorial Forest, where we're focused on working with JCPS to expand outdoor science-based environmental education for low-income students and minority students. And what you likely don't know about me is that I minored in Russian in college. Learning a foreign language late in youth, and with it beginning a lifelong quest to learn more about other cultures, led to a succession of open doors for me. In college, it helped me obtain a position as a resident advisor in an international dormitory at UK and to study abroad in Russia, researching efforts to establish nature preserves in the Far East. Those college experiences, I'm absolutely convinced, were the critical factor in me being accepted to an environmental management program at Duke University, where I was even able to pay for half my tuition and board with a Russian language scholarship. I have no doubt that if it had not been for my pursuit of language studies in college and graduate school, I would not have the job I have today, my dream job here in Louisville. And I'm so proud to have the opportunity to send my fourth grade daughters to a public school, Hawthorne Elementary, where they can experience as young children with Spanish what I could only begin to experience as a young adult. My story is not unique, and you can talk to any number of parents at Hawthorne Elementary, and they will tell you of similar experiences and hopes for their children. As an engaged parent, I thank you for taking the critical step a few years ago for granting Hawthorne's dual language immersion program optional status. Hawthorne has Louisville's only foreign language immersion program, and the socioeconomically diverse students at Hawthorne are exiting fifth grade with great potential to be fluent in a second language and to travel their own exciting paths to academic and career success. Unfortunately, unlike in other states such as Utah and even other nearby cities such as Lexington, there's no pathway within JCPS for continuing the immersion experience into middle school and beyond. I think this is a serious missed opportunity. Those who know me from my work at the Forest know that I'm a firm believer that children, regardless of their socioeconomic background, should have access to a variety of experiences so that they can expand their horizons as young adults. It is one reason I applaud the great work being done at the magnet schools with which we partner, Cane Run, Portland, and Young. For me, foreign language proficiency and extended introduction to other cultural experiences is similarly vitally important for child development. My children are fortunate, and my wife and I will take care to provide these experiences regardless. But I would like to express to the board that JCPS should look to the immersion model as one that can serve the needs of GAP students within JCPS. Research across the country supports this. We stand with other supporters in the community ready to work with JCPS to implement a Spanish immersion model in Louisville. With that, I would like to specifically request that the board ask JCPS to identify a framework that we might work together to explore to make K-12 dual language immersion a reality in Louisville. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak before you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Andrew V. McNeil. I hope I did not mispronounce that. Welcome, Mr. McNeil.
Hi, I'm probably going to be short. Name is Andrew McNeil. I'm going to second everything that Bennett just presented. Our daughters are fourth graders together at Hawthorne Elementary. And I'm a firm believer in the value of the dual language Spanish immersion program that she's participated in since beginning there at kindergarten. I applaud the school board and JCPS for their School of Innovation process that they just undertook. I was a project leader for a group of teachers, administrators, staff, and parents at Hawthorne that pulled together a proposal for that, and we certainly understood that that was a very competitive process, and certainly understand that that there was a very finite number of proposals that you would accept. But what it really granted me the opportunity to is dig into the research and dig into the facts and figures and the statistics of the success at Hawthorne Elementary and the way that the model is moving forward with closing some achievement gaps, some very significant achievement gaps through that program, but then also exploring the educational literature and research to demonstrate that it's a proven model across the country. And as Bennett said, it's a proven model across the country. We also see that this model exists at Fayette County Public Schools. And if nothing else, we should be certainly competitive and wanting to get our competitive use flowing and make sure that Fayette County Public Schools can have one up on us with having a Spanish immersion program from all the way from elementary school through high school. And so there are parents out there ready to support this. I think we're probably getting perhaps a little bit ahead of ourselves in terms of prior to this magnet discussion that we're going to have tonight. But even before that, know that the time is right, the support is there, the need is there. Although I don't think that anybody should take time to read the whole statement of School of Innovation proposal we put together, but if you just look at some of the facts and figures from the gains that some of the gap groups have made at Hawthorne, the evidence is really pretty compelling. For a daughter, for a fourth grader like mine, my daughter, I mean, it's a real enrichment, access to an incredible opportunity to perhaps become, or at least build towards bilingualism. For some students, it could be the most effective achievement gap closing strategy that may be out there for English language learners and for Hispanic students in JCPS. The data also shows that it is an effective means of closing achievement gaps across all socioeconomic and other classified students. So there is support out there. I certainly appreciate the time to come up and speak in front of the board. Superintendent Hargens has been very gracious, and the couple of times that I've caught her in rather random locations at the school showcase, and one time over in Frankfurt to hear me out and tell me about this meeting. So thanks for everything. Thanks to David Jones for being a supporter and certainly facilitating our efforts. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Moffitt. He wants to speak about the alternative programs, and I know we're going to do that next, but just in the interest of trying to allow our speakers to come forward. Mr. Moffitt, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. I came at the last minute. I didn't realize that you were dealing with this issue tonight, and I don't have hard facts and figures about alternative schools as such. I came also to support what Clout is saying, that we need action, that zero tolerance is not helping. It's not making our schools safer. And restorative justice, in some form or other, has shown great progress in many places. I don't have the prescription for JCPS, but we need action quickly. Dr. Hargens, you haven't been here very long. It's no wonder that you haven't changed everything overnight. I've been here 50 years and haven't changed much. And this problem hasn't changed much. It's time to make progress on this problem of disproportionate suspensions and discipline. We can do better. We've got to do better, and it has to start quickly. It won't, and it's going to take, not just little bits of this and that. It's going to take some rather drastic changes. Some people that are used to the way it is may have to go. We may need some new people that believe in change. I don't know the answer, but the community, it's not just Clout. The organization that I belong to is ready to do action. This community is needing action. Please, I know you want to do what we need. It hasn't happened yet. Please get down to work and make it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Moffitt, for being here. Before we start with the reports, I want to clarify with Dr. David Wicks. Dr. Wicks, I'm not sure of your topic. Is he here? David Wicks. Are you speaking on either of the two items? Okay, well, we'll have to ask you to stay with us for a little while, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to our discussion items, and our first item of magnet schools and program review. Dr. Harkins.
Thank you, Chair Porter. At our last meeting, the GE Foundation said that we're a moving and improving district because we're willing to critically review what we're doing, to benchmark ourselves against best practices, and seek ways to continuously improve. That is exactly what the Magnet Review is all about. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Radowski, who will introduce our guests who were part of the review team to give us their recommendations and findings.
Okay. Chair Porter, board members, Dr. Harkins, I'm pleased to be here tonight to introduce our consultants / experts from the Magnet Schools of America, who conducted a review of our magnet schools and programs during February of this year. As an introduction to the people in the audience and the people that are listening, back in 2011, we had Dr. Gary Orfield come in and do a review of our student assignment plan. And as part of his recommendations, he asked that we do a review of our magnet schools and programs. Staff did an early review in 2012, and this is a much more extensive review of our 59 magnet schools. You had during your work session tonight, you had a pretty I guess exhaustive kind of report where there were questions and answers. It lasted an hour and a half, and we do thank you for your time and attention. I want to tell the audience that what is being recommended tonight will be up on our webpage, and you will have a chance to comment on these recommendations, and the comments will come to me, and I will compile them, and I will share the audience's comments with you, the board, at a future board meeting. And I think that this is a start of a process of looking at how we can better serve our students and this community in both raising the achievement of our students and maintaining the diversity that we have in our schools. And with that, I'm going to introduce our two guests. To my left is Scott Thomas. He is the executive director of Magnet Schools of America, and he headed a team of 7 people. And one of the one of the team members, and I'm finding out, is his right arm, like Dr. Dossett and like Dr. Munoz is my right and left arms. She's his right arm, at least, is like Crystal Moore, and she's the director of organizational leadership and development for Magnet Schools of America. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thomas and Ms. Moore.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Harkins. It's a pleasure to be here, and it has been a pleasure working with the faculty and staff here in JCPS. Just to get down to the nuts and bolts here, Magnet Schools of America was asked to answer or respond to several essential questions. The 3 questions are basically, are the magnet programs magnetic? Are the magnet programs diverse? And are the magnet programs promoting achievement? 3 essential questions that we were asked to come and answer using a variety of sources, but also to really analyze the schools and the system as a whole, as an ecosystem, not just individually by schools, but really as a whole system. How do the magnet schools interact with one another, and how they impact the district overall? We looked at the magnet program in contrast or in comparison to the 5 pillars that Magnet Schools of America has adopted. And these 5 pillars serve as essential standards for what characteristics define magnet schools, and they are as follows: diversity, innovative curriculum and professional development, academic excellence, high-quality instructional systems, and family and community partnerships. And those essential elements really guided our process. And that methodology that we used as we conducted this review was significant. It was comprehensive. What we did is we looked at the quantitative data analysis provided by JCPS. And we should recognize and commend JCPS for the amount of data that we had requested, that they had provided, and gave us really unfettered access to the data that we had requested based on student achievement, demographics, and so forth. We also conducted a community survey analysis with over 1,300 respondents and nearly 600 people leaving individual comments. We also conducted school site visits and principal interviews. We hosted 6 community forums. We interviewed the district and district administrators, and finally we used our national standards. So to answer the first question, you'll see what standards we use to answer. So the first question, are JCPS magnet programs diverse? Using Standard 1, looking at student recruitment and selection. Standard 2, diversity and equity. And Standard 3, which is across the board in all essential questions, is the magnet and district relations. For the question, are JCPS magnet programs magnetic? We looked at Standard 3, which focuses on the environment of the school. Standard 4, theme fidelity. 5, curriculum fidelity. 8, educator development and leadership. 9, school leadership. 10, effective organizational and systemic improvement. 11, community engagement and partnerships. 12, family engagement and communication. And of course, 13, magnet and district relations. Are the magnet schools promoting achievement? We looked at the instructional fidelity. We looked at student achievement, and of course, magnet and district relations. To look at our key findings, as I had mentioned before, we really looked at this as a comprehensive ecosystem of schools and how they interact with one another and how do they interact within the district overall. And we had a number of findings that we'd like to share with you. The first deals with Standard 1, student recruitment and selection. We found that JCPS, while it has robust printed materials and a video about the school choice process, we found that oftentimes many of the magnet schools were simply relying on the showcase of schools and not doing additional outreach to market and recruit students, and specifically targeted recruitment. We found that wait lists varied greatly. Some schools had little or no wait list, whereas others had waiting lists of hundreds of students. So we found a wide spectrum there. We also found that some programs had as few as 3 students in them, and some schools had fewer than 10% magnet students, or students who had opted in from outside the reside area. We also found that the 2009 cohort were less diverse than the more established cohort of schools. And in relation to demographics, we found that schools in the central corridor were more closer to the district average using the diversity index, whereas schools in the eastern and western corridor had a wider disparity. And then finally, students with special needs and English language learners were underrepresented and underserved in magnet school programs.
When it comes to district level supports for magnet programs, one thing we noted is that perhaps the traditional programs may be detrimental to some of the diversity goals of the district. And in a similar vein, there's a lack of transparency in regards to the selection criteria, and the fact that students are selected for magnet programs locally may make it difficult for the district to achieve its diversity in the magnet programs.
Using Standard 13, magnet and district relations, we did not hear complaints about transportation. And so that is a compliment. Sometimes you hear that there are overwhelming bus rides. The complaint about the transportation process didn't surface to any level of significance. District level staff is also committed to magnet programs being successful, viable options to JCPS families. Your principals, your teachers, your district staff is committed, and that is a tremendous asset and something to continue to build on. We also know that the district market share of student enrollment is in many ways due to your offering of magnet and choice programs. We recognize that math, science, technology, as well as your visual and performing arts schools, lacked consistency K-12 and the grade level of articulation. We also recognize that exiting of students from magnet schools, especially in the elementary and traditional programs, traditional schools, is of concern to Magnet Schools of America.
So when we think about that question of are magnet programs magnetic, two things that we look at are the environment of the school as well as how closely the school sticks to its theme program. And so the facilities really ranged in their ability to support the theme, and the level and quality of the equipment was not always present, especially in some of your secondary programs. And in addition, some of the magnet schools really lacked a cohesive instructional focus that supported the theme of the school.
Considering Standard 5 curriculum fidelity, we found that magnet schools varied by school and theme and was not often integrated throughout the day, with a few exceptions. So typically what we like to see is that, especially in elementary and middle schools, that the theme is integrated throughout the day in all subjects in a variety of ways. We found that the curriculum fidelity varies widely by like-themed schools. So your traditional MST, visual performing arts schools, there was not a great degree of consistency.
When it comes to the area of educator development and leadership, we didn't see very much professional training for teachers or principals in the specific themes that were being offered in their schools, nor were teachers who were teaching in schools with the same theme being given opportunities to collaborate and share best practices across campuses. And finally, in this area, in terms of educator development, none of the principals have received specific training when it comes to leading schools that are offering theme-based instruction.
Although we have found that some teachers and principals are seeking that out. Under leadership, we found that magnet school administrators' understanding of the purpose and goals of magnet schools varied widely in JCPS. Also, teachers and principals are not necessarily selected for their ability to teach or interest in working in a theme-based magnet school, and that's taking the long view. And also, the district does not necessarily have sufficient resources to provide the leadership or training for magnet schools at this time. There are no positions or people in place to support that.
When we think about how the magnets exist in terms of being effective organizations and having systemic improvement, a considerable amount of time is spent at the school level in terms of selecting students, and perhaps that's time that can be spent in other ways. And in addition, one of the things that we noticed that was not always happening is an analysis of student achievement, especially when you compare the students who are in magnet programs within a school to the students who are not in those magnet programs within the same school. Because we didn't see that data being analyzed by those groupings, they may not be necessarily addressing any systemic inequities and outcomes that are happening amongst the student groups.
Standard 12, community engagement and partnerships. We found that in many schools, the University of Louisville is an established and critical partner for your magnet schools, as are several other local businesses. We applaud that and hope that that will continue and continue to cultivate and expand those relationships. Also, we recognize that magnet schools are limited in their ability to seek out additional partnerships and funding to support the theme and opportunities for students. And then finally, schools do not have equitable access to resources outside the district that could support the magnet program, whether it be in terms of alumni, parent fundraising, and so forth. Wide disparities.
When we think about families and how the magnet schools try to engage and communicate with the families, we notice several things. One, parents are supportive of the magnet programs and believe that they serve an important purpose in your community. Yet at the same time, many parents express a finding that it's a complex process, one that's not very clear, not very transparent, nor easy to navigate, and that sometimes the processes are quite different from one school to another. In addition, parents sometimes express that they were seeking to escape something else that was available that they perceived as being worse. It was interesting to find that many families were not aware of all of the magnet programs that currently are available in your communities. And that when we looked at the marketing materials that are available, they're limited in what they are offering. Many of them are only in English, and as a result may not be accessible to all members of the Jefferson County community.
Looking at student achievement, instructional fidelity, we found that magnet programs within schools have inequitable outcomes in minority and low-income student achievement is still low. So there's the gap, in particular, in programs within schools. There's not necessarily a correlation between student achievement and the quality of the magnet curriculum. Standard 7, magnet program within schools had lower student achievement than whole school programs. That is something that we see nationally. And schools that select students based on academic criteria preclude many students from the opportunity to enroll in a theme-based school of interest to them. And moving on to our recommendations. First and foremost, we believe it's important for JCPS to define the vision for magnet schools, clarify the purpose of the magnet programs in schools, and create goals for the district magnet program overall. All stakeholders should understand the purpose of the magnet schools and why they exist. Secondly, we recommend creating a community task force or steering committee to determine the purpose, scope, and types of magnet program offerings within the district, including the Magnet and Choice program being offered within zones. The goal of the task force should be to create a 5-year strategic plan that will serve as a roadmap to address the findings and recommendations of this review.
When it comes to the traditional model, because the existing board policy dates back almost 20 years, we think this is a good time for you all to review it, and in particular to look at its purpose, philosophy, goals, and expectations, the academic program within the traditional schools, student discipline practices and policies, how students are removed or exited from those programs, and the feeder patterns that exist, and that all of this should be aligned to research and best practices for effective schools.
Standard 13 relates to the district creating a process to eliminate redundant, ineffective, and undesirable programs within 1 year. This process should require that effective schools develop a magnet school plan that addresses school-wide instructional focus, integration of the theme across the curriculum, and recruitment of students if they are to remain magnet schools. Schools that fail to do so adequately should be discontinued in the following school year.
Number 5, we recommend that the school create a process for figuring out what types of magnet programs could exist as mirror magnets, ones in which multiple campuses are offering the same magnet program. And as you do so, think about things such as demand for that theme, diversity, achievement, facilities, training for teachers and principals, and how transportation can be offered in a reasonable and cost-effective manner.
And when the district does decide to replicate or expand programs, it must do so in a manner that is cost-effective, adequately prepares staff, and provides facilities that can accommodate the theme with industry-standard equipment if that is required of it. These mirror programs should ensure that students who apply to the program and then would be assigned to the school. We ask that as a consideration.
Additional issues at the district level. Number 7, we recommend that you all convene a work group to evaluate the programs that we did not look at. We only looked at the 59 district-wide magnet programs. There are others that also should be considered if this is to be considered as one ecosystem. Any magnet programs that have low student achievement, low enrollment, low diversity, and not considered viable programs should be eliminated. And that all magnet schools, no matter the current level of quality, should have a magnet plan that really outlines what are they doing to recruit students, how are they offering professional development in that particular theme for their staff, what is their curriculum, how are they offering instruction, and that these magnet plans should be submitted annually.
As it relates to the student recruitment and selection process, we recommend that JCPS adopt a centralized application process where the district would be screening for school qualifications and conduct a lottery for all schools. With one exception to that, it came across loud and clear that this community does take pride in its selective high school, and that being DuPont Manual. Our recommendation there is that the selection criteria become more transparent and that students receive a ranking and are notified where they are on that wait list. Of course, there's a lot of demand for this program.
Looking at diversity, one thing to ensure that all students have access to magnet programs is transportation. JCPS should make sure that students who attend Brown have access to it. In terms of the environment, making sure that all of the equipment is industry standard, especially at the secondary level, and that the district should conduct a facilities assessment to ensure that the magnet schools have attractive facilities for families and can support the capacity and theme of the magnet programming.
Related to theme fidelity, we recommend that JCPS consider adopting the Career Academy model at Southern, Central, and Iroquois to offer students a robust program with internships and career opportunities. Also, we recommend that the JCPS Central Office magnet staff be organized to work more collaboratively with the teaching and learning department.
In terms of instruction, we believe that all the magnet schools should have a written curriculum that outlines how that theme will appear in all of the coursework, and that at least once a year the school staff should look at what was planned versus what was taught and assess how well they're implementing their magnet curriculum. When it comes to student achievement, we recommend that schools look at achievement and discipline data by demographic groups to make sure that they're eliminating any sorts of achievement disparities. And in any places where students are having difficulty in the current magnet programs, the schools need to develop intervention programs that are tiered to enable all students to achieve at high levels in their magnet programs.
We also recommend that JCPS provide teachers and magnet program coordinators professional development on theme integration and curriculum development. Also, we recommend that the district have support for magnet schools and require a district director of magnet programs who would oversee the magnet school curriculum, offer instructional support, as well as theme integration of all district-wide magnet schools. This person should also be responsible for convening school staff by theme and instructional focus and coordinate professional development, training, and facilities for the magnet programs.
As we think about systems, one thing we would recommend is a fiscal analysis. If there are any programs that are eliminated, to assess what cost savings will be realized and how that can be reinvested into existing programs to ensure more high-quality options. In addition, we recommend that school and district staff members have opportunities to examine exemplary models of magnet programs that offer similar themes, so that way you all can begin to learn from them immediately.
And then the final two. We recommend that the district seek out an industry advisory board of community stakeholders that focuses on the magnet themes. They should be convened quarterly and provide feedback and suggestions for continuous improvement. We see this around the country as a best practice to not only validate what's taking place, but offer new suggestions and to make sure that continuous innovation and improvement occurs. And then finally, our recommendation is to make sure that your marketing materials and program information and application is provided in multiple languages to make it more accessible.
Chair Porter, this concludes our report. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we've spent not an enormous amount of time, but we've spent some time discussing this. So are there additional comments that the board would like to make now as it pertains to the report? Any additional comments? Mr. Hadaway, Ms. Duncan next.
My first question is, Chair Porter, will we be able to collect questions, because there's a myriad of questions here that we can funnel in correspondence with and tap into your expertise a little bit further? Okay. You had mentioned a couple times earlier today. First off, thank you for coming here. Thank you. Give me a lot of confidence in the comprehensive report that you gave. It's very rich in content, and it spurred a lot of questions, so I'm glad we'll be able to continue the conversation. But I do want to ask, you mentioned a couple times that the schools have different size waiting lists, and I want to take away from that. Is that just marketing? Is that academic success? Is it a mixed bag of a lot of things? Why do we see a disparity there?
Great question. The answer is it depends. For example, we saw a fantastic magnet school where the theme is rich, it's integrated throughout the day, the teachers are loving it, the principal's leading it, it's fantastic, and nobody knows about it. I mean, they're not attracting people. We saw that in a number of cases. Whereas, so what we don't want you to think is just because they don't have a huge waiting list does not mean that they're not a good magnet school, okay? Because that's where that marketing and recruitment piece has to come in with support. And just because it has a long waiting list is often tied to either the selectivity, the history of the school. I mean, you have schools with rich traditions here. And they've changed over time, but people have these traditions. They have their schools that they love and their families have gone to, and that's great. So it really just depends on the school, where it's located, what is its history, what is the theme, and when was it started. As we mentioned before, the 2009 cohort is a little bit different because they didn't necessarily get the support that was probably required at the time to do those to the level that they could have or should have, even though some schools have done very well despite that.
Thank you, and I appreciate the phrase that you stuck in my ear too, scream your theme. I think that's a great marketing piece. I want to ask also, you mentioned there's disparities in partnership and funding and going out to see that. What are you seeing is limiting those schools? Is it just time? Is it tools? What are they missing to go out and seek those partnerships?
I think that there are a couple of things. One is it was made known to us that there is a clear district preference that things happen centrally to seek out partnerships and that businesses aren't being hit up for support. And that makes sense to a certain extent. However, magnet schools are different. If they really should have community partnerships to enhance and invigorate their theme and to make that learning more relevant along those thematic lines. So if there is indeed a process in place that, or at least schools feel as though there is a process in place that prohibits them from seeking out those partnerships, that should be addressed. Secondly, I think a lot of it just has to do with training and understanding how to do that. How do you approach a business and a community partner? What is the ask, and how do you make sure there's also a benefit to them? Because it shouldn't just be a one-way partnership. We want to make sure that our business and community partners are getting something out of this as well. So it's not just a one-way, please give to us, but also what will you get in return through this exchange in partnership with our school?
And scanning across the nation, when you're looking at magnet schools, are you seeing both that? Are you seeing the individual schools seeking that as well as the district?
Absolutely.
In many districts, they have sort of a central advisory board where folks from businesses, not-for-profit organizations, and universities come together and advises the district office on all of the magnet programs. And then individual schools have comparable advisory boards that focus on the performing arts program or the IB program or the math science program. So that way it's happening on two levels.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Duncan?
When you mentioned, when you talked about the concept of diversity in these schools, did you also take a look at the socioeconomic and academic diversity in these schools? When you talk about your groups, do you also look at the socioeconomic and academic diversity in a school?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
or do you just, or were you primarily focused on ethnicity or language or something in that category?
No, we really try to be inclusive about that term of diversity. So yes, we looked at socioeconomic, we looked at the free and reduced lunch percentages, we looked at academic achievement of students within the program and students within the who are the reside students, and we looked at the whole school academic achievement.
One of the recommendations I think that you made concerned the Olmsted schools, and you said the Olmsted schools, you were thinking maybe we should convert them into traditional schools. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So there's the Olmsted North and South, which is one's and all boys, one's and all girls, and the idea there is that there wasn't necessarily a theme other than the gender. Typically what we see in an all boys or girls school is that those there's a leadership component aligned to it and an instructional focus aligned to it. So we didn't necessarily see that in these schools, and we felt that because there's demand for the traditional program, that this might be a more natural place to tailor that, to pair it, either with the traditional program as a single gender school or as a traditional program in and of itself.
The only complication in that, or not one of the complications in that, would be the fact that there would not be a resides area for those two schools. You would have to get rid of the resides area, and then you draw, a traditional school draws from various places instead of the resides area. So it becomes then a matter of assigning those students to other schools and the impact of assigning those students to other schools. And that would be a much more complicated prospect than just, tomorrow we're going to be traditional schools. It involves so much more than that for us. And, I don't know if you've thought of that, but it is a much bigger project for us than than just changing them and calling them traditional.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. I just didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, we take that into consideration, which is why our recommendation is have a process, create a 5-year plan to look at what should happen and in what time frame. These are just recommendations, and of course, this is a very complex system. There's geography, there's time in terms of distance to travel. There are a myriad of factors. But what we know is that these schools are created as single-gender schools in a very short amount of time, which was no small undertaking. And so, we recognize that if you were to do any transition in any school, that a deliberate process to make sure that students are being maliciously displaced, but are really given consideration in a thoughtful process to how you would phase in or phase out a program is really important. So the intentionality and taking the time to create a process and plan that has a lot of input is essential, but we recognize this is a very complex system that's been created.
Yes, and let me ask one other question. You mentioned or in the report, it talks about Fairdale's heavy highway program and trying to move that into Iroquois because of the construction theme that you have, and phasing out the international or the Cambridge International. But our schools, our career academies have been created, and our career tech programs have been created to sort of become competitors with our magnet schools, because the magnet schools do draw kids. And we want them all to perform at high levels, but we have some who've already tested at high levels. And when you talk about DuPont Manual High School, you're talking about over 920 kids that have been tested for the advanced program. And so when you put 920 in one building, that kind of changes the complexion of everything for why that school appears the way that it appears. And other schools, the intent of the career academies was to strengthen those programs so much that it would become a harder decision for families, so that they would want to come and attend the career preparation academies in their resides areas rather than choose the magnet schools that would take them away. So that's the competition that's going on here to try and make attractive schools for everybody. And one of the things that I noticed that Fairdale uses Cambridge International as a program to attract kids who want academic challenges, and that particular program is brand new. It's just begun. So, and it's showing signs of success from its beginning. From last year, I think was the first year. So this year, the school has pulled in more kids, but it takes time to grow these magnet programs. And you talk about repurposed schools. Well, Manual has gone through several repurposing over the generations. It has not been one thing. And that's what it is today. The same thing it is today as it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It is not. So Manual, it took time to make Manual become what it has become. So I think all of us are going to have to be very thoughtful about this process of deciding whether to phase out something or not, because it has to have some time and support to give it a chance to grow and to do what we want to do, which is pull in to make it a harder choice for families who have those kids that have already tested advanced and have already decided where they want to go, to make it a harder choice for them so that they find that they can be served in other schools as well as those magnet programs. But that's why we get that oversubscription. If people think that their kids have tested in advanced, then those parents are looking for them to be where other advanced kids are. And that's what's happening. That's why we have that imbalance in the system. But anyway, thank you very much. I know it's all great food for thought. And the top 3 things that you said we need to look at, which is our exiting practice in some of our schools, and the selection process, and the professional development to help staff become better prepared to handle the themes that they are teaching in those magnet schools. That's all extremely helpful information, and I appreciate very much your work.
You're most welcome.
You're welcome.
Ms. Haddad?
Thank you. And I do want to say these are just recommendations before the sky falls on all of us. And things we're going to be looking at because I think we're going to be surrounded by the Indians. I agree with what Sarah said, so I won't go into what I said in the early one, but I question about manual and about the HSU and keeping it. You talked about the magnets in 2009 weren't as effective. At that time, there were 22 put in. There was really no rhyme or reason to some of them. It was just they took a survey and then these were put in. And I think 2 out of the group at the Lincoln Performing Arts School and Western Middle School, the 2 that have been the most successful that I have seen. And that's the reason. We do have one business. Ford has come in as a partner with our 5-star schools, our vocational schools. You talked about some of them in here. I call them vocational because that's what everybody tells them to me, our career-themed schools. But they are coming in and helping us with our career themes. And some of those are in here, but not all of them are. And I think another time it would be good for you to look at those and see what we're doing to give all kids equal opportunities with health, engineering. So they're just starting too. But manual, when my children went to manual, it's not the manual of today. And it has, in 84 when we made a magnet, nobody thought it would ever go. And look at it now, and it has. And the traditionals were in the 70s, and I guess the Brown even earlier than that. But I think it does take time. But thank you for this. It's something to think about and for us to talk about. And the main thing is the marketing of it. We need to let people know. I know we've tried different ways, but we have to find better ways. And if you can help us with that, it would really be helpful because we do have some great schools, and not all of them get the recognition that, as you saw, as you go into them. The people working hard every single day to help every kid in every single school here in Jefferson County. So I'm glad that you got to observe some of them. Wish you could have seen all of them because some of them are just really working hard to make a difference and having a harder time to do it. I like what you said about the MST schools and the traditional schools getting together between schools and having the same. They used to do that and they stopped that. It's good for them to have the same curriculum that they know that they're all on the same line. And then making more traditional schools, then the next question is, what's going to be the next traditional high school? If you make more middle schools, then you have a feeder pattern that you have to follow. But this is great information, and thank you, and I'm looking forward to reading the report. And like I said, everybody just hold on to your hats. These are just recommendations. Thank you.
You're most welcome. You do bring up an important point. These are things that we think you should consider and have a process for considering them. The question you'd asked earlier about manual, when we look at capacity, when we look at the overall ecosystem, you have schools that have incredible demand, and you have fantastic teachers. Okay, so there's the school district doesn't look like it does today than it did 10 or 20 years ago, and it won't look like it 20 years from now. So what are the things what are the processes that you can put in place on a regular basis that will continuously improve, reevaluate, and examine your existing programs to make sure that they're equitable, accessible, promoting achievement?
Thank you.
Mr. Brady?
Speaking of your recommendations, I'd like to actually ask a question of Dr. Radowski and Dr. Hargens as to what is the administration's plan on acting upon these or reevaluating these and getting back to the board to find out which recommendations that the district will take or act upon, or what the schedule that would look like.
And actually, this is receiving the recommendations. So what staff will do is create a process to actually look at them and bring forward staff recommendations based on these recommendations. So the timeline would be what you saw in your paperwork is some of these schools being on a 1-year kind of probation to look at, in a year. And of course, we know that we start promoting schools for 15-16 in the fall, so the October, November. So in order to make changes for 15-16, it would have to be from now until we actually start recruiting, which is October and November.
So we should see something from the administration between now and October, November timeframe. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Mr. Brady asked my question, so thank you.
Sorry.
ESP going there.
Ms. Westland? Okay. Not if you don't want to. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody.
And then, real quick. I said this at our work session, and I'll just take a minute to do that. We talked a little bit about how a lot of parents look to magnets as the only option, and I think this is also a good time to remind the community we have lots of great options. Most of our schools are not magnet schools.
That's right.
And many of our schools are very high achieving, and all of our schools have wonderful children in them. So don't want to leave a public meeting without saying that. So we'll keep that in our consideration along the way and strengthen all our schools.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you again for being here, for your report. I think we have had an opportunity to ask a lot of good questions. I would like to say, I think at least 3 or 4 of us have said that there are 21 recommendations. So please do not hear us saying that in the fall of 2014 that this is happening. This is a report that we requested. The recommendations have come back to the board. Staff, Dr. Hargens, Dr. Radosky, everyone will put some meaning to the recommendations, and we will figure out how to make it work. I do want to make the point again that for the magnet schools that started most recently, some of those, it says look at in a year's time. I would hope that we provide some kind of professional support and guidance to those schools, because I do not think they have had an opportunity to have some of the services as other schools in order to be successful. So in order to provide access to all of the programs, I would hope that we would come up with a strategy to support the programs before we automatically say, okay, a year is up and now the program is going away. So that would be my ask. I thank you very much. And Dr. Radosky, I would like, Ms. Haddad mentioned this, so I'd like clarification, because on one of the slides where it talks about JCPS should adopt the Career Academy model at Southern Central and Iroquois High School to offer students robust internships and career opportunities. If I'm not mistaken, Southern and Iroquois are part of the Forward Next Generation Learning.
Yes,
is that
they are.
correct?
Yes,
and
they
I
are.
think Ms. Haddad has alluded to the fact that some of the high schools that are part of the Forward Initiative are not listed in this report. So there needs, not right this minute, but when you come back to us, there needs to be some clarification as to why we have some listed here as a magnet, but they're also part of the Forward Next Generation Learning. But a school like Central High School is not a part of the Forward Next Generation Learning. It is a magnet program in that it does not have a resides area, and students apply, as does Manual, to come from all over the district. So I think we need to make some clarity there when the information comes back to us. But on behalf of the board, we're going to scream thank you for the work that you've done, as well as scream the theme. So thank you so much, and Dr. Radosky and Dr. Hargens.
I'd like to make one last point, Chair Porter, if I may. As I was sitting here and I was listening to the discussion of Manual and how it has been different things, we are coming up on the 30th anniversary of April 4th, 1984, in which I was part of a group that recommended that Manual turn into a magnet school. And at that time, I don't think there were that many magnets in the country, or people understood it. And like Manual did struggle in the early years in terms of, if it, just to get to the point about the 2009, I mean, you know, if we would have been 1 year into it back in 1985 and looked at it, Manual might not be what it is today.
Exactly.
So I do understand that.
And I just want to add my thanks as well. Thank you for your thoroughness, and thank you for the report, and we look forward to the full report. And just say it one more time, these are recommendations.
These are recommendations.
Everything's posted on the website, and there'll be a box for you to give your comments so that the public can weigh in. The whole review was community engagement in the review, so the next steps really are to get people's feedback. And we want to give you the opportunity starting right now.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was wondering, would this the listing of the schools also be on there? Other than this big report, are you going to put the schools on there and what the changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
So
that would
people
be
can
part
see
of the,
what we're talking about.
Yes, and that'll be part of the full report.
Yeah.
Great
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't resist. The comment about the five-star schools and the GE, next generation, and I just want to call out, even though we have a bunch of experts come in from the National Magnet School Association, we have so many competing brands and names and themes and ideas. They only looked at 59 schools. They didn't get it. All the other ones, and they didn't get it. Right. We've got to really bring some clarity. I'm bewildered, and I've been on the board now for more than a year by what we've got going on, and I can only, just make sure that the people in the district here, we really have some work to do to communicate to parents, people new to town, people in other languages, all the great stuff that we do offer. So thank you.
And one more time, Board Member Hadaway asked if we could give questions to Dr. Radosky, Dr. Harkins. Any questions that you did not get answered in this session or the work session, please send to Dr. Harkins or Dr. Radosky in the next day or so we can ask for responses to those, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to receive the report? Ms. Duncan, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item is the report on the alternative school status and recommendations. Dr. Harkins.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Actually, I love the term ecosystem, that our schools are part of an ecosystem that supports students. And an important part of our ecosystem are our alternative schools. So, and I want to actually commend the hard work that goes on in our alternative schools every day. But what we asked Dr. Hensley to do is he and his staff take a look at and provide some information to the board regarding alternative schools. So I will turn it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Hensley.
Ms. Porter, Dr. Harkins, board, thank you very much for the opportunity today to talk to you about our alternative schools. Really, there are four primary objectives for this report. I want to increase your understanding of the different kinds of schools that are in our district and the important role that alternative schools play. I want you to have a clearer picture of our processes and the fiscal realities and the overall academic outcomes of those alternative schools, and to get an enhanced understanding of how A5 schools are working harder than ever in our district to ensure that we put each student on a success pathway, that each student finds his or her way because we build the right program, we individualize our approach to ensure that our most disenfranchised students have an opportunity to be successful. And finally, to give you an opportunity to discuss and for me to share with you some future plans of how we're evaluating, analyzing, and looking ahead with our A5 schools. Before I do that, though, I would like to ask that I've asked all of our alternative school principals if they could come by and be a part of this session, be available if you all had any questions for them, that we could bring them up. And additionally, I asked them to bring packets. So we're putting together packets that give you a very good overview of what's happening inside their schools. But if they're very hardworking, if I could ask all of you principals to please stand up. So in our district, there are basically three designations of schools. There are A1 schools, which are referred to as regular schools, although I don't think I've ever walked into a regular school. They are under the governance of a principal generally, and they have a SBDM, or a school-based decision-making council. And they are not a program that's operated by or part of another school. We also have, which is the focus of our work today, A5 schools, which are generally called alternative schools. They are district-operated facilities with no definable attendance boundaries, usually. They're designed to remediate academic performance, improve behavior, enhance learning for students, and to help all students that have any problems. If we need to get them on a success pathway, we're able to do this. It can also be a district response to school safety issues, to personal safety issues, or disruptive behaviors. And finally, we have Kentucky Educational Collaborative for State Agency Children Funded Schools, commonly known as KECSAC, which are agency schools where kids are generally placed. I thought I would take just a moment to give you a listing of all of our A5 and A6 schools. So if you'd like to take a look at those for a moment. And one thing to note is those schools have often somewhat different missions and different purposes and different kinds of programs. There's great diversity among all these schools, but all of them share that common trait. They are about the success pathway. They are about finding for kids that need that way. These schools help them find it. So, as you can see, we're a district that has no expulsions. So we don't expel students. Consequently, when a student doesn't fit into our usual program, it's our job to have an entire system that enables us to find what those students need and how we can move them along. There's a process for entry and exit into our alternative schools. They are schools like Butyl Metro, Breckenridge Metro, and Kennedy Metro. Those are assigned by the district using board-approved student code of conduct. And they are students who can return to an A1 school after completing the specified program or meeting a certain criteria. Additionally, we have schools like Jefferson County High School, Liberty, Phoenix School of Discovery, and our TAP schools, where students aren't really assigned. They're self-referred, referred by family, or referred by school staff. These schools house the students and educate the students until they graduate unless the student requests a transfer. And students are awarded diplomas under the school name when they attend these A5 schools. So I thought I would share some data with you that would give you a very brief and quick overview of what our A5 schools look like. Now, there are some key points in some of this data, like JCPS enrollment has gone up, but fewer students are being served by these particular alternative schools. And you can take just a moment to look at the data. If you will note, between 11 and 12 in the fourth pupil month, that alternative school subtotal, that between 10 and 11 and 11-12, that we saw a decline in enrollment. That decline continued. And our average attendance and average enrollment in all of our alternative schools is 1,753. But it's very important that you realize that this ranges, these students are very transitional. That in many of these programs, students will move in and out of the program. That at any one point, a school could have, for example, Breck Metro may have 286 students at one time, can be a max for it. At another time, it may be well below 200. But so throughout a year, there can be a change in the enrollment. This is based on an average. Another piece of data I wanted to share with you is alternative schools are more costly than A1 schools as expressed by per pupil expenditure. If you look at the per pupil, the spending per student, the third row down, you can see across the board a comparison of our A5 schools compared to the district total. Additionally, you can see that alternative schools have lower attendance rate than A1 schools. With the exception of Phoenix School of Discovery, the attendance rate for alternative schools was approximately 76.7, which is nearly 18 percentage points lower.
Is that TAP too?
Yes. South Park Tap and the Phoenix School of Discovery are successful with graduation rates that are higher than the district average percentage. So you can see a broad range of the things that are happening inside these schools, and they serve different populations with different purposes. Additionally, you can see that student-teacher ratios at these alternative schools are about 50% lower than the district average. If you'll look at the row that's bracketed in red, you can see they range from 5-to-1 to 8-to-1 student-teacher ratio compared to a 15-to-1 district average, which is actually a very good average for a large urban school district. You can see that the average years of teaching experience is comparable to the district average in these alternative schools. So teachers, you can see across the board at the very bottom the average years of teaching that it's very similar to the district average. I will note that this chart is a little bit wrong. The National Board Certified Teachers at Jefferson County High School, that number is actually 3, not 1. Now, in terms of academic achievement, which ultimately that's what we're attempting to do, that's what we're working on, is to give these students the skills and the knowledge that empowers them, that gives them an opportunity through these programs to be at the highest level of achievement with the highest skills that they can so they can be successful, so they can indeed be college and career ready. And we spent a lot of time this year, and the principals in the school have spent a lot of time working really hard on college and career readiness, on ensuring and changing the program so that students have opportunities. We have a long way to go, but as you look, the percentage of students scoring proficient and distinguished in these alternative schools for grades 6 through 8 are lower than the district. And at the high school level, only Jefferson County High School has comparable achievement data as the district when it comes to language mechanics. That's where we saw the closest correlation. At the high school level, English 2 at Jefferson County High School has a higher percentage of proficient and distinguished than the district total. And you can see those bracketed in red. So with the achievement data, you can begin to see that there are different levels of success. When compared to the district, a lower percentage of students meet benchmarks on the ACT battery of assessments, on the Explore Plan and ACT. And you can see that data outlined and compared to the district total. Over the past 2 years, the principals and all of us have worked really hard. The first thing we did was create an alternative school task force to inform how we could work together to improve alternative schools. As part of this process, we've redefined all alternative schools as alternative success pathways so that we can begin to individualize the future story of students, to give them a meaningful pathway that connects them to something that hopefully they want, something that we provide them the skills to achieve. We've worked on assigning all alternative schools to one of the 6 academic achievement areas and begin to integrate them into the regular program so that their great ideas can be shared with other principals and other principals can share strategies and ideas with them as well. We've worked on using the individual learning plan addendum. That's part of new legislation that requires, Kentucky statute that requires alternative schools to provide every student, except those who already have an IEP, which is an individual education plan because they have special needs, to have this individual learning plan, so that when a student steps into one of our schools, they have an intake session, they bring stakeholders together, and they begin to plan out what's it going to look like for you in this school. What goals, what are we going to do to help you reach benchmarks so that you are stronger in this environment. We've worked on placing our exceptional child education students and having a procedure for alternative schools to place them. And so the placement for EC students has been changed to address the corrective action plan that the Kentucky Department of Education has asked us to put in place, and we are very successfully, at least all the inputs of it so far, we've put in very successfully to address and correct disproportionality in our schools. And we're working to connect students to CTE, our district-wide program, so that if a student is inside a school and he or she goes to an alternative school, if at all possible, we're attempting to keep them on the same pathway they were in their high school. So that if they left a good program that may not have been the problem for them, it may have been other classes that was the problem, we're hoping to be able to keep them there, to provide transportation in the future, to ensure that that student gets what he or she needs to stay on that path that was working for them. Additionally, we're seeking to increase availability and usage of CTE programs inside the alternative schools to see if we can connect students with what they need in order to stay on that CTE pathway inside the alternative school. So if they come into an alternative school and they're not on a pathway, we're trying to see if we can get them connected to CTE. We're also planning for changes due to compulsory education. We know and have known for 2 years now that when we move to the mandatory attendance of 16 to 18-year-olds, that could impact all of our schools, but particularly our alternative schools. So we're looking at how we can strategically address that, connecting them with our truancy offices, connecting them with social workers and others, so that we can try to encircle those students and pull them out, and keep them in school in a productive way. We're also monitoring college and career readiness on a weekly basis. The assistant superintendents meet with the principals of our alternative schools, check their numbers, look at college and career readiness as we move along. We're working on developing plans and interventions unique to each school to increase attendance. And again, that's part of the compulsory education. And we're developing plans and interventions unique to each school to increase graduation rates, to see how we can keep those kids on the pathway that they need to graduate. This right here, very briefly, is an example of the alternative individual learning plan that we've created. This process, just very quickly to look at that document, but what it does is it serves as the conversation when a student walks into an alternative school, so that we are placing them in the right place with the supports and intervention that they need with that connection to CTE. So finally, I'd like to share some recommendations, some work plans that we've worked on with A5 schools, and some things that we hope to be able to continue discussing as we evolve these schools into better outcomes. First, we want to continue to monitor and take action steps to increase college and career readiness. That we've put that out front, and we're really working through the achievement area teams to empower these schools to get better CCR results, college and career readiness. We're considering opening seats to address compulsory education. We're working with Mike Razor's office to see what seats we might estimate with Ralph Stevens and demographics, to see if we can look ahead and see how many seats we're going to need in alternative schools. We are going to assemble the Alternative School Task Force, or reassemble them, to develop an intentional plan for track-back scores. And across Kentucky, there's been a lot of discussion about what do you do, because these are A5 schools. The students' test scores go back to their quote home school. So, the principals recognize and take full responsibility for working with those students in an attempt to keep their scores, to ensure their proficiency, and send those scores back to their home schools. So we're looking at the way that the impact of assigning scores to schools in priority status, which is one challenge. Many of our students tend to come from priority schools. How do we address that? How do we rethink track-back scores so they don't go directly to priority schools, if that's indeed possible? We're looking at the impact on the district if fewer accountable students attended A5 schools. How can we create our transition islands, which I shared with you at a work session earlier? How can we take and have these classrooms, these places inside our schools so that we keep a student who has been absent for 3 weeks? How do we get him or her back and immediately put him on a different pathway to get to relevant work, instead of just sending him right back to his classroom where he's 3 weeks behind? How do we do credit recovery that quickly? Instead of waiting till the summer, what if we could start credit recovery in these transition centers in the middle of the school? What if a student is struggling in a classroom behaviorally? Is it possible for us to use digital learning inside his own school to give him or her a different experience? So we're exploring exactly what those are going to look like and pulling together a group of principals and teachers and others to help us design what that would look like. And finally, the overall future status and enrollment in A5 schools. And looking at all of our seats across the board, how can we think systemically about the placement of students in A5s? Next, we want to develop a common digital learning platform. And we're working with Dr. Razor's office to see if we can make it so that all alternative schools are connected digitally to the, quote, home schools, so that if a student leaves a transition island or a program from his or her home school, the same technology can be utilized in the A5 school. And then we're working on considering an alternative school standards and performance-based approach that would utilize project-based learning and experiences in the field and other experiences and even grading for students so that they're a part of something very meaningful to them and engaging. And how can we use internships and CTE and those kinds of projects to keep these students engaged and connected in the learning process? So I just want to end with reminding you of our pyramid that I shared with you earlier in the year about the number of students that our system has to have alternative pathways for. We have to, and I don't mean just alternative schools, but we have to be very sensitive to the fact that if the RTI behavior support intervention system is accurate, if indeed, as the research suggests, as they suggest, that we have 80% of our students that will be very low incident, that we have 15% of our students that will have moderate incidents and need some support, some mentoring along the way, some redirection, and we have 5% of our students who are severe, who have challenges that have led them to make very bad decisions or have led them to struggle in a traditional classroom. Do we have a response to that? Are we able to create a success pathway for that student? And our alternative schools play an extremely important role and contribute to that kind of work. So if there are any questions, comments, or feedback, or if you'd like to bring up any of the principals, they would be happy to come up.
Mr. Brady.
Principals, since you're here and you have the board's ear, would any of you all like to tell us what you would like or need from us in the near term from the Board of Education? Not everyone speak at once.
And if you don't want to stand up and pledge allegiance to what you want to the board, if you want to get that to us in some kind of form or fashion, sometimes you tend to be shy, but I think that's a good question, Mr. Brady.
I mean, now's your time to speak if you'd like to. We'd love to hear your input is what we're trying to say. Okay.
Okay, Ms. Haddad, then Ms. Duncan, Mr. Hadaway, Ms. Westland, Mr. Jones, Board Member Porter.
Okay. We're going down the aisle. I guess I've been on the board, since I've been on the board, all these programs have been created. And I have to tell you, I'm really proud of these schools because they take on enormous tasks. I've had the opportunity to work with them and the pleasure to work with them, and they take their job very seriously and care very deeply about these kids. I think sometimes they get a bad rap, but they are very hardworking people, and their hearts are on those kids. And we are very fortunate to have these programs so that our kids can stay in school and not drop out. I know at Liberty alone, they had 94 graduates. And when we first started the program, there were 7. Now, we kept these kids in school, and that's what this group does. You know, we can talk about the cost, and we can talk about that, but they are saving lives every day of kids that are not out on the streets. So I just want to commend them because I've had the opportunity to work with them and be a part of this. And when we created it, every time we created something, it was important because we were saving kids every single day.
Ma'am.
And so I really thank you, and I know all the board appreciate your hard work too. I would like to ask you on the committee, who is on the committee, on the Alternative School Committee?
Right now, we have the principals are on that committee. It's not really a committee; it's more a task force where I brought them together as the leaders of those schools. I brought in Sherry Klusky from the Kentucky Department of Education, Carol Montgomery, and Terry Ray. Teresa Whitlow, who leads our SRT, our Student Response Team efforts. And then they were able to bring any teachers that they would like. So we had teachers that would come in and others that were a part of just giving feedback. Buell Snyder, of course, has played an important role.
Well, I just want to be sure that the people that were doing the work were involved in the process. Sometimes they're forgotten, and they know what's going on. And the numbers, you can't go by what's just on paper. Because paper is paper, and it's not kids, it's not people.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I think that, you know, I read the data, and I respect data, although I don't understand all of it sometimes. But I think that we have to remember that we're dealing with kids, and a lot of these alternative schools, when you say they're in and out, they are. Some of them go back to their schools, some of them try to stay at their schools. So I think it's just really hard to just catch it and put it in one basket. But I appreciate that you have a task force, and we need to look at all things like we did, the magnet schools, and see how we can make them better. So, like he said, if there are things that we can do to make it better for you to help these kids, you be sure and let us know. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to call some up because I'd like to ask them some questions. I'd like. No, I mean, I think our most at-risk populations, you know, are. It's just, to me, it's an amazing task that you perform of keeping them in school and in the education process, and I know what a struggle that is. But I'd like for Mr. Riddle to come up and Mr. Cripe from Breckenridge and Iman from Liberty. Is Iman? Oh, okay. She's not able to get here.
Who's here from Liberty? Somebody here from Liberty.
Don Reed, yes. I'd like Don Reed to come up too, please. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. And I know I had some questions that I was going to ask Dr. Hensley, but then I wanted to ask you all some things first. You know, when your kids come in to you, the levels that they come in at, and you begin to serve them. I know they're not going to stay there. They don't stay there all year long usually. But let's say, what do you think the average amount of time is that you are able to serve kids that are assigned to your schools?
Bucha Metro. I'm Joey Riddle from Bucha Metro. Kids are generally assigned to us for 12 weeks. When they come in, there is a battery of assessments we do to kind of see where they are when reading and math, and we assign them courses to remediate or accelerate wherever their needs may be. But our primary focus is behavior behavior's what robbed them of their education. It's what's got them placed in our setting. So we try as hard as we can to, we focus on 10 behavioral goals every day, every period. It's monitored, tracked, that the kids identify where their strengths are. They go to an advisory period to start the day off to where they're able to crunch their own numbers. There's a specific threshold for them to attain to qualify to exit at the end of that 12 weeks. So the time period, if a kid comes in and they submit to the understanding that they need help and we have the services to provide for them, it's a 12-week window in which they're in our process. And now there may be some kids that are short of 12 weeks, some kids that are a little bit longer of 12 weeks, because I feel it's fundamentally imperative that we only release kids at the end of a grading period. That's a time at which we can ensure that we're sending those kids out the door with either credits or grades from a 6-week grading period.
And when we talk about making them college and career ready, I know when you have them for 12 weeks, you're not going to be performing that total task. But what do they do to address like the career readiness at Buchel?
I'll struggle to answer that one. For career readiness, we have nothing at this point. And I know Dr. Hensley, and I'm part of that task force, it's something that we are looking into because it is a state mandate that we do. And there is...
Mr. Riddle, if you would talk about your role at KDE as well on that.
I'm a representative from JCPS on the state cadre with the Kentucky Department of Ed to break down KAR 704 KAR 19.002, which is the alternative school legislation. And part of that is kids, when they come into an alternative school, whether it be voluntary or involuntary, and Mr. Cripe and myself are involuntary schools, we offer them as close to the college and career ready components as possible. So it's something that it's something I see that we all see that we need, and we're trying to identify a process to get them there. But at this point, I can't say that we have anything.
Okay, thank you very much. And, Mr. Cripe.
Okay, I'm Butch Cripe. I'm from Breckenridge Metropolitan High School. I think it's important that we understand we get kids from Kentucky Department of Human Resource. We get kids from group homes. We get kids from intervention camps and Kentucky Education for State Agency Children. We also get kids outside of our county, and then we also get kids outside of our state. So the point I'm making is it's hard because our kids are basically through the adjudicated court system in that, and we have to serve each one on an individual basis. I can't really say it's a 12-week program. We're looking at the needs of those individual students, and a lot of them are mandated even by the federal gun issue of 1994 that says if they're put into our school because of a gun issue, and using that as an example, they're going to be there for a calendar year. So it's really tough to say at that time, but we have a nice 3 months, very thorough process that we look at every individual case that we have and go through that process and make sure that we have served each kid, and we can justify that with each kid. If I get a parent or an organization, and as I said, you get kids from group homes and things like that in those agencies, and they want to know the kids' stand. So we're very versed in being able to come in and have a dialogue with them and let them know what's going on. But as far as you were asking about, curriculum and things like that, we have been involved in PLCs for the last 3 years, so we do all the data analysis, core content. Our kids come in with common standards that we follow. We analyze data, and our teachers are very good at it. Matter of fact, before the district was even allowing teachers to do the testing, because we weren't under the mandate, our teachers were creating them, which is, of course, as we all know, is one of the 3 stipulations now that everybody can do. We were doing that back 3 years ago, so very proud of our teachers that are able to do those kind of things. We feel like we're ahead of the curve on that. speaking of with the CTEs and those kind of things, we have a program that we do in the morning, first period, where we address each day an individual need that we feel like the kids have. We devote a whole period to that. We do individuals, like on Mondays, Tuesday is social, Wednesday is our test-taking skills, Thursday is like a financial literacy, and then on Fridays we do our career with the kids, and they are exposed. And these are actual lessons. These are not just teachers go in and talk to them. These are actual lessons. We created 185 lessons with the CART program that we had that was given to us probably about 2.5 years ago, and it's been very successful with the kids. As a matter of fact, we did a poll with the kids that one of my teachers is studying to be a counselor, and so she asked me if she could do a poll, and we said, yeah, sure, as long as it's in first period, because we don't want to take away from the kids in their content area time. So anyway, we did that, and there was 5 questions she pulled, and all the results told the kids that they felt like our school, we had 80, I believe the results were between 80 and 95%, or I should say 86 and 95%, that the kids felt like that we were exposing them to college and career readiness. So we felt that was pretty good with the population that we get. I mean, those are the kind of things that we're doing. One number, because it seems like a lot of, we talk about data, and Ms. Haddad, you addressed the data issue a few minutes ago. So I do want to make one thing that's perfectly clear, that I think we all realize, when students take national tests and things like that, ACT, AC plans and things like that, that they're not going to do. A lot of times they won't do well, and that's a collection of them since they've been in the first grade all the time that we get them. But I would like to report that the success that we've had at our school, we have given actually 199 exams, the EOCs, which is, of course, generated through our teachers, and those are, of course, as you all know, state exams and that.
End-of-course exams.
End-of-course exams. And what I want to report is that we've had a huge success rate. We've had 197 of those kids that passed those tests. So if you do the math, that means only 1% of the kids that have been involved in those tests since the inception, 2.5 years ago, have not been successful. And the nice thing is the norm is with the Algebra 2, and that's where the 2 did not. We had perfect with the U.S. history, perfect, and with the biology and with the English 2. All kids have passed those. So I think that's, ours, we want to say 99% of the kids have passed those exams. So I think that's our flag.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And at Liberty, she mentioned the improving graduation rate. What do you all do to address? To address the individual needs of the kids when they come into you, and you have to assess where they are, and then after that, what happens to them?
Just to give a little background information, I'm Tammy Euler. I'm assistant principal, stepping in for Ms. Talat. And we are an academic alternative school, and we serve grades 7 through 12, and we're designed for students that are older than they should be in the grade and behind grade level. We test each student that comes in with the TABE test, which is an adult basic education. And with the incoming students, we have 53% of our students who are below a 5th grade level when they enter in, that's 7 through 12. We have 68% in math that are below 5th grade average when they come in. So our kids are significantly behind grade level when they enter into us. We still teach the core standards and all the same practices as the other school. So we have a lot of different programs that we implement. We have corrective reading, we have study island, we have remedial math. We have a CART person that works on college readiness. We give the same standard test as far as the end of course, the ACT, Explore, Plan, those regular, district tests. So we try to meet their needs and get them up to grade level while they're working on the academics in their classrooms.
Okay, very good.
We also have 61% of our population is 18 and over.
Wow. Mr. Reed, you have them at middle school. How do you assess them when they come in, and what happens to them then?
Well, after the intake, we have our goals clarity coach, and so what we do is we assess the students with the iReady Read and Math program, which is aligned with the state core content. And we go from those assessments. It's a pre-assessment, and then we work with the kids. They have we do academic interventions. They do the success maker, like the district does. We have they work with RTI 3 days a week. With social skills, we have 2 days a week. With we still do RTI response to intervention program. And what happens in the RTI class is we take the assessments from the iReady assessments and reading and math, and we group the kids according to their proficiency, and they work. So what that assessment does, it shows the students where they are on their grade level, and then their planned lessons, and the teachers work with the students at the students' pace and where they are at their level. And then we post-test the students when they leave, and we've had most of the students show growth. I have statistics that I can show you. For example, I'll give you a couple math scores after 55 days. Now, that doesn't mean they're on grade level. They've shown growth in the grade level that they were tested. For example, all students at Kennedy, 75% of them showed growth in math on iReady assessments. On the survivors, which is ECE, 88% of the students were able to show some type of growth. 100% on the elementary grades we have, 4th and 5th graders, showed positive results in growth. 73% on the 7th grade, and on the 8th grade, 39% of the students showed growth. In reading, it's a little bit different scores. For example, all students in reading at Kennedy showed 59% growth in reading skills and comprehension. 75% of the survivors of special ed showed growth, 50% of the elementary, 55% of the 7th grade, and 55% of the 8th grade students showed growth while they were with us a period of about 50 days based on the iReady assessments, which are aligned with the state core content. So very proud of that. The RTI interventions it's an effective program. The iReady Read and Math that we have is an effective program. And also we do the district assessments as well at Kennedy. And of course it's all core content based. So our kids are very successful. We have 1% recidivism after the students leave the school.
That was something I was going to ask too, the recidivism when they have to come back.
Average is 1%. And there's a couple other things I'd like to share with the board. This is the transition data, ILPAs. I have 2 part-time administrators assigned, and they visit all the schools where the kids return to their home school resides. And just to share some transition data, when the kids' percentage of students who improved their grade while they were at Kennedy was 86%. When they transitioned back to their home school, 68% of them maintained their grades in language arts. Math at Kennedy, 95% of the students improved their grade. 51% of them maintained their grades after they returned back to their home school. Science, 73% at Kennedy improved their grades while they were there with us, and after they returned back to their home school resides, 54%. And I have social studies, 76% improved their grade while at Kennedy. 49% maintained that after they left. But one I'm proudest of is the students who were at Kennedy, 95% of them improved their overall GPA, their grades, and then 76% who returned to their schools maintained their grades while they were at their home school resides. So that's phenomenal success for an alternative school. College and career readiness, we have a robotics and engineering program. The students program robots. They work that with a math program. We won a district award last year, and they're able to Skype with scientists in Toronto. It's an outstanding program. We have a national model at Kennedy. There's so many good things to show about what our students are doing. I can hand you a brochure that we've put together. I can email it to you if you'd like to see it. I know, Linda, you already have a copy, and Debbie, you have a copy as well as Mr. Brady. But I'm very proud of our school. My heart is with these kids. I'll tell you that right now. It's a tough assignment. I love it. Wouldn't trade it for nothing. And I'm very proud of the kids. I really am. And I love them to death. And we're working hard, but we're getting good results.
Well, one of the things questions that I also had was about your funding. You know, when we show 40, like Butch, I think we're looking at $49,000 per student. But where does that money come from? I mean, is that all district money, or is that when we figure that, are we figuring other money in there with the district money?
Ms. Duncan, I think it's my understanding that is a lot of that money is generated from the state, and that money would travel those kids wherever they go. So Title I is involved in that. Grants are involved in that. We haven't really been privy to the fact of knowing exactly what those amounts are and what they represent. So that's about all I can speak to that. But I do know it's not just encompassed of a set amount. It's a lot of things that have put into that to make those numbers. Now, I'm just a simple math guy. That's what I did. I taught math before. But when I do the numbers, they don't generate the same way. My budget, considering what the number I was shown, is a little bit over $3 million. Now, if I get 130 kids in there, that comes up to $25,000. And if I would take even what KDE may recommend, if they're saying 95 or something like that, that still doesn't come up to 49. So I don't know where because you mentioned the 49, I have no idea where that comes from. I just haven't, that number was just thrown to me recently, so I have no idea. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was curious about that. And as far as when they staff you, I mean, you don't decide your staffing. How's your staffing decided? For you and for Joey. I mean, how's your staffing decided?
Since I've been at Buchel, the funding's been the same, so the amount of teachers been the same. There really hadn't been any changes. So how staffing factored? I don't know.
I can tell you this. Up to 3 years ago, I believe, we had actually teachers in classroom teaching 4 subjects each period. I mean, if I'm teaching Algebra 1, a math class, I'm teaching Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and also the applied math for the seniors. So I'm saying the teacher's teaching that every period because in some incidents, for example, in English, I have 1 full-time English teacher in my school right now. And we've been able to convert 1 teacher who's qualified, of course, but we took her out of a couple classes and made her a senior English. That way it alleviated the problem of that. Now, what we've been able to do is take the master schedule, and we've got it down a lot of the classes into teachers just teaching 2. So in Algebra 1 may be teaching geometry, and then she may be teaching, the other one may be teaching Algebra 2 and that. So as far as staffing and that goes, that's, we've got, I guess it's the old, Red House type thing that we all knew about, where the teacher teaches all subjects to all kids. So in a lot of ways, that's what we have. Half my school is ECE. I have over 50% of the kids in my school are ECE kids, which is, there's no complaints there. I'm just saying, but that's the reality. So thank God for the federal government in that way, because half my teachers are, funded through them.
Now, one thing I want to add about funding staffing, keep in mind at Buchel Metro, we will have 500 to 600 kids rotate through our doors in any given year. Just throwing numbers out, March 11th, 32 kids transitioned back to regular schools. But from March 12th to that following Wednesday, we had 22 new kids. So we're doing 4 or 5 new kids coming in on any given day. We try to get if a kid gets referred to us, we try to get them in as quick as we can, and our job is to serve the district. So if we have a certain threshold, if we have to exceed that threshold, sometimes it does become a safety issue, but we're still not released till the end of a grading period, and we'll support the district fully with whatever we have. So funding, I guess it's kind of a hard thing to do, being a principal at a comprehensive high school. Your funding's based on projected enrollment, and our projected enrollment, it's hard to tell how many kids are going to come at any given day from LMYDC or a mental facility or a camp or a trimester school or semester school. It's just, it's trends in the community and that we see, so it ebbs and flows.
If I could just add, it's all funds divided by the average daily attendance like all schools, but what we can do is have somebody from CFO Hardin's office sit down with you and show you where that funding comes from and where that calculation is made so that you understand it.
Appreciate
so
that.
We will be glad to do that.
And I'd like to say at Kennedy, Linda, we're fully staffed for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I looked at the average students that we have each year. In the past, we've been based on the students that we serve annually. And the average for the last 5 years, not including this year, is 397 students a year that we serve, that we take from the middle schools and elementary. It's not 185. I know I saw that daily average up there, but you have to staff to ensure that the kids are properly educated and get the core content they're supposed to. You have to fully staff Kennedy. And the other thing is, this year, as of to date, we've serviced 316 kids. So we're well on track to surpass my first year as a principal, where we had 445 kids through the year. So it's what I like to help the board appreciate, that every child in this district has a right to free and public education, free from bullying, free from violence, and free from fear of harm. Every child in this district has those rights. And then with our alternative schools, we have national models. We have had for years, and we're doing good things for students. But continue to support us. Our alternative schools are a safety net, not only for the district, but it gives these intensive kids an opportunity to succeed, like a Desmond Moffett, where we sent some of the emails out that y'all visited. He's now gone to George Mason University. He's very successful. He visited the school last week and spoke with our kids. And so continue to fund us, back us. There's a lot of safety issues. It's very important that we support the principals in this district when they have safety issues with kids in their building. We have to have a place to educate every child in this district. And our alternative schools serves that purpose, and it serves as a safety net for the district.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, all of you.
Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you for that. That imagery of a safety net. I saw for myself at the Phoenix graduation last year, that was beyond even a safety net, but it was a lift, not only for me, but for those students as well. So let me add my voice to the chorus of admiration and gratitude for what you do. Thank you. Thank you. And I don't have a specific question, Chair Porter, about A5s, but I do have a site-specific question, if you'll allow me, Dr. Hensley. Going back to the Phoenix School of Discovery, how is that planning going to one campus, and how is the communication going along to all the stakeholders involved with that?
We've held several meetings with both the staff and with the principal and his leadership team with Phoenix. So I believe it's going along really well. We're still resolving a few little issues, but we want to make sure that that we have both a short-term plan to get them in their present home, and then a long-term plan with Phoenix as well, as we look at what down the road. Phoenix meets such a unique niche for us, for students that have therapeutic needs, for students who have been disenfranchised and don't fit into that traditional program, that we need to find those pathways for those kids, and Phoenix certainly does that really well. So down the road, we may want to look at a larger location for Phoenix so it can serve more children.
But you feel confident that the message is getting out there for all the planning and the
yes.
transition? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Westland.
Thank you, and thank you all again for being here. Several questions have already been asked, especially about achievement and funding. I won't revisit that. I have one dumb question to start with. What's the difference in Butyl and Breckenridge Metro High Schools?
Well,
You probably told me that. But
Butyl is primarily set up for students who have behavioral struggles in school, and it's a short-term facility. And speaking for Butch, and if I misspeak, Breckenridge is more for the adjudicated youth that will be serving
That's
a
how you
longer
explained
period
it
of
to
time.
us when we were there. Right.
Now, also understand we work very closely together, and when our enrollments reach certain capacities, we do help lighten the load for one another. But that's the primary difference.
Okay.
And let me say this too about that. As far as that goes, we work pretty hand in hand on that, because we will get some kids sometimes. We run into problems with siblings. You have two in the family that are not going down the correct path, and so what we'll do is we'll split them so that we don't have that. We run into gang situations where we have two leaders of gangs at one school, and we'll split those up. So those kind of things, we look at, the student relations and that, who does the recommending. We don't recommend, they do the recommendation, along with, if it's ECE, the ECE department now has come in, and they do the recommendations on where they go. But they work very close with us on those things, because we don't want additional conflicts to, rise up into the schools, and it's just not good for either set. So we work with the families and that on those kind of things, and most of them are very susceptible to those kind of things as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I just want to recap all of this alternative setting that we offer. I think, as Dr. Hargan said, it is a really important piece of what we do. We have the state agency schools, which aren't necessarily all Jefferson County students. They're wards of the state, right, Michelle? Right. And then we have the schools that are where students are assigned without choosing because of some behavior or some kind of therapeutic setting. And then there are those like Liberty, where students can choose if they're having trouble, and they can be provided these offerings that they can choose them. To the three guys here, the high and middle, what are in the last, you all have been at your jobs for a couple of years at least.
I've been at Kennedy for 9 years.
9 years.
6 years as a principal.
Yeah. What are the kinds of things that are more often landing students in your schools? What kind of behaviors or discipline issues or therapeutic issues do you see mostly?
The number one factor why students are assigned to Kennedy would be intimidation and harassment of staff or other students.
Serious intimidation.
Yes, serious intimidation. And then closely following behind would be weapons, knives, guns, those type of things. I have a demonstration kit that I've collected, assembled off kids a number of years, and every year I add to the collection. I discard some of the others, and I wanted to show you that so you could see how the potential threat that these kids pose sometimes. Not all of them, but some of the kids. And it's very serious. I just didn't want to bring it out into the public view. I'd rather show you that behind closed doors.
I don't have to see it. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you have this year we seem to be getting more weapons than usual. We took a sock with a granite rock in it off a student the other day, off the bus, and it's used for swinging and hitting someone. And if a student got in an altercation with another student on the bus, and he used it as a weapon, it could be potentially deadly. So that's the first time I've ever gotten anything like that, and so it's very serious, and you all are well aware.
What about you, Joey?
Snapshot of Butyl. This is first semester data. 19% were in our building for harassment or intimidation of staff and or students. 17% for assaults. 15% for threatening staff. 10% for drug possession, and 7% for weapons, and the 7% sadly was the majority were gun related.
Is that same for you, Mr. Cripe?
Mine are a little bit more severe. I get robbery, armed robbery, assault, serious assault 1. Some of them I really don't want to say in public, right? So, but those kind of things we also get in there, those kind of crimes. And really any serious crime you can think, because just like in the way it should be, all kids are considered innocent. Well, they have a place to go, and whether or not they are from the jail system or not, they still have to get an education, and we'll get them until they go to trial, and then if they are, of course, they leave us at that time, or if not, of course, they stay with us, and we work them back into the system if it's a good situation.
What about at Liberty? I know they're not assigned.
Left out.
I'm not going to leave you out.
While the students are not sent to us, a lot
Right.
of the students that we receive are results from.
Is it a step up to come to you, or they choose to come to you?
I don't know if I would call it a step up. It's a step lateral. It's students of a different nature. They are behind grade level. There are reasons they are behind in grade level. Some of them just struggle cognitively. Others have traumatic household environments where they've been through some type of traumatic, rapes, abuse, something in their life that has hindered them from being successful in school. So while they've not committed a crime or they've not assaulted somebody, they've either been a victim or they've been involved in something that has not made education a priority. And so those students have come to us, and they have a lot of barriers and a lot of obstacles. So while we're educating them, we're bringing in social agencies, private therapists, 7 counties, what other community resources that we can bring in to help bridge those gaps so that they are ready to receive in the classroom. And so that is a big struggle that we deal with.
Thanks. Now I have a question. We haven't talked about elementary at all. Students who might need some extra help, and I know probably we've all heard of a few this year, and certainly elementary children need extra efforts. I know they don't pose such a dangerous threat necessarily, but from what I hear, the settings that for those who might have therapeutic needs, I hear they're full, like Peace Academy's full, or 7 counties overwhelmed, or this is happening. So those are concerns, not because we want children out of school or out of the class necessarily, but they may need help. So that's another piece of this that I'm not hearing too much about yet, about how we find these transition islands or the alternative settings. Is that something you all are looking at, Dr. Hensley?
Mostly with elementary schools, we do attempt to make the intervention happen inside the school because we have so many resources there, or attempt to have the resources there. However, we're looking at our district positive action center, at least one location that we want to pilot this upcoming year, where we will address students that have at the lowest grades who have tremendous therapeutic needs, and see work to design that to keep them approximately 9 days in an attempt to work through therapeutic issues and continue their education. It's a treatment center in effect. So we're working on that. We've utilized our student response teams inside schools and the other resources that we have. It's just difficult we don't have many options other than Waller for special needs students to pull students from elementary schools out to different locations.
Is Waller pretty full as well?
I believe it is.
That's what I keep hearing. There's just not enough. Not that you want to pull them out, put them in different places, but sometimes you need.
Our real solution, our real challenge is to figure out how we change the trajectory for those kids. How do we work and get the supports and utilize the system we're getting in place, which is a strong one. How do we utilize that, our core of counselors and psychologists and social workers and SRT workers? How do we utilize them to change that kid's direction? See if we can support and help families.
In my experience this year, talking to parents about several incidents, seems to me it's a very fine line deciding keeping a student in the class with help and getting them intensive help outside of class, which we can't, in my view, ignore that is sometimes necessary.
And that's
I've
where
heard
the
about plenty, I won't say plenty, several examples where educators thought it was necessary. And I've heard a few schools mention PACs, the Positive Action Centers. The problem is, at least in the area that I represent, the district, the schools have no room.
It's difficult, yeah.
You can't find a PAC center at Crosby Middle School. And I've heard
or any of the elementaries,
they have no space.
So they're cramped.
So those are all issues that need to go that I represent, the district. The schools have. The last thing I just want to mention is just that you can't find.
Isn't
a
it
PAC
great
center
that we have places for all children or any of the elementaries?
We saw all these signs that zero tolerance, no zero, stop
So
zero
those are all issues that need to go.
I don't know that. I mean, I know that those words are in our code of conduct. But the last thing I just want to mention is just that you can't find.
Isn't it great?
We have a place for everybody. That is, we really all these signs that zero tolerance, no zero. Just think of the kids that would be in all these would not be. They'd have no place. If we didn't offer these places, whatever it looks like, we've got to have those places. And when you hear zero tolerance, what does that mean? Just that you do this and you go to mutual or something? Because I don't feel like we have that many zero tolerance. And I've been sitting in code of conduct meetings, and there aren't that many things, short of dangerous things, that gets a kid automatically assigned anywhere.
Right.
So I want us to be sure and defend this system, because we aren't, don't let people say that. Say, look, we're pretty limited in that kind of thing, and when we do that, it's because of safety. That's what I am viewing and what I'm learning. And so I appreciate the report, appreciate all your work and yours too. It's important to review what we do, but I think we all appreciate the extra effort it takes and that you give to help students and give them that extra attention that they need.
Thank you.
Ms. Wesselin,
Yes.
I think on zero tolerance, one of the things that confuses people with the word zero tolerance, if a child is bullying another child, then zero tolerance does not mean they are banished from the school system. It means that specific incident has no tolerance and they are dealt with in according to whatever the behavior is, and then it's done. End of the behavior, end of the consequence, it's done. And I think that's where the zero tolerance gets confused.
And really where zero tolerance becomes a problem is when you give up. And what we've tried to do and what the principals are working on is how we shift to each child, so that with no matter how deeply we need to go, we will continue to stay after a student to get him or her on that right, and I know I'll use it as a cliche, but on that right pathway, because that's really what we have to be able to do. We have to let them see that there's something better. PAC centers exist to teach replacement behaviors. Often what kids need is the understanding of how to navigate and negotiate through institutions that their backgrounds haven't given them the opportunity to gather those skills. Part of what we need to do is teach them.
That's enough for me. Thank you very, very much.
Mr. Jones.
So I'm not going to repeat the thanks and praise for your efforts from my colleagues. I think the expression has been eloquent, and we're grateful for what you're taking on. I think my questions are more managerial. The report that we've gotten gives us a lot of feedback on the academic performance of the students. Some of it looks like it's probably not very useful. I mean, I look at the ACT and plan stuff and see 0% of the kids in a lot of categories are at benchmark. That smells like no effort on the test or weird things going on. Surely that's not accurate, but it kind of led me to realize that academic achievement is really important for the students in these schools. We have to do everything we can, but that's not the only purpose of these schools. And I think that just as we're responsible for seeing that nutritious food comes through the cafeterias, we need to understand the other things that are going on in these schools. And I guess maybe I would put it, and it's really not to you guys, I'm curious what you actually use to manage your schools. but I'll maybe put the request to Dr. Hensley. I would love to see the next time we look a more holistic view, because I think I don't want to just sit up here and chant every child graduates college and career ready and then think that we've done our job, because some of these kids are not going to graduate college and career ready by the time you guys get them, and I want to understand better what we're doing, and that is in no way to take away the importance of the work that you're doing to help kids learn their own way, and also to provide a way to remove kids from other classrooms so that the 98 or 99% can really, can really achieve. But I think whatever the somewhat broader data set is that really gets after the things that you're really trying to do, whether it's safety monitoring or physical health, or we talk about behavior. We've got a lot of mental health issues, I assume, in here that are seriously beyond the funding capability of the schools, and that probably call on us and maybe some of our other elected representatives to really understand what the heck is going on and get resources into the system, not in here, not just be seriously informed about funding capability. As I know I still am, I just can't keep up. So that's a little bit of a management nerdy push for more information. But again, it doesn't at all detract from the great work that you guys are doing and the important role you play in the district. My only other question, and that's really not a question, that's just a request, but this is just for Dr. Hensley. I hear about trackback scores from time to time, and that to me is the most impenetrable bureaucratic speak I've ever heard. What in the heck is that about? What is the underlying issue? Why are people so passionate about it? What game are we playing here?
It's when a student takes his state accountability test. He may be in the alternative school setting, may have been there for a long time, yet his score or her score is accountable to the home school. So it's even possible that a student would come in from another school district into our district with a alternative school placement that we would actually place them directly into, and this is an extreme example, although I believe it has happened, where they would go directly into an alternative school, spend the year there, take the test at the end of the year, and the score would track back to one of our other high schools who actually never saw that student.
So what is the purpose of that? Why is it set up that way, and is that something that we should continue?
I think we need to, there needs to be an exploration, and I have said this to Dr. Holliday, the commissioner, that there needs to be an understanding exploration of how we can change that, because it's truly not a measurement of school, of the school that's accountable. However, I think what the pressure is for alternative schools to be high quality and have academic programs in place and be more than holding cells, and for districts to ensure that those schools offer those opportunities, that a student who has a behavior issue, his intelligence may not be at the root of his problem, that it may well be possible for that student to achieve academically if put in the right environment and not written off by a school district. So I think it's one of those stressors and one of those things that pushes us to be stronger, to look at the needs of each kid and remember our purpose is around academic achievement.
So it's to make sure nobody's left out of the math.
So everyone has access
everybody has a role somewhere.
To a viable curriculum.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Jones, to respond to your first question, my colleagues and myself, we did prepare explanations of our schools to pass out that may provide you more of a comprehensive look that we can provide at some point before we leave.
Okay, and you'll be receiving those packets. Dr. Montgomery, Carol Montgomery, will be providing you with those.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments. I don't want the answers, but I have some questions that you can get back to me in the interest of time. We are grateful in Jefferson County Public Schools that we have placement for all of our students. at this time we are not expelling students from school because we have alternate placement opportunities for students. I was reading something on the web about suspension, and it says if a student has been suspended even once by the time they're in grade 9, they're twice as likely to drop out. Something else said that by the time you reach high school, male youth of color are more likely to have been suspended or expelled, higher chance that they end up in the criminal justice system. So I say that because I think sometimes the people that come before us and speak think that we're not paying attention, but we are indeed paying attention to the population that we serve. So here's some information that I would like. Please discuss the mental health supports that are in place in high school and in alternative schools. How do we effectively address improving achievement as we suspend students, and what happens in the alternative school placements? What is the probability of a student being assigned to alternative school, that percentage will graduate, or that percentage will go to the criminal justice system? As we talk about staffing tonight, requesting information about staffing, I would like the board to receive information that talks about what the staffing formula looks like for all the alternative schools as it pertains to full-time staff, classified, certified, and retired teachers and administrators. Those are my points, and I don't expect any answers tonight, but thank you for your service. Are there any other comments from the board? Is there a motion to receive this report? Mr. Hathaway, second. Ms. Westland, all those in favor? Thank you very much. We're going to go back to the consent calendar and the superintendent's report. Thank you for being willing to receive the information of the two discussion items early on in the board report. But before we go to the, we'll have Dr. Hargan's report, and then we have 7 tie bids, and then 7 tie bids. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Hargan's for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chair Porter. Let me see if I can just quickly pull together some things. So how do you improve a district? You improve it one student at a time. So our students, we've just heard, are served in magnet schools, non-magnet or regular schools. Those are A1 schools, alternative schools, A5 schools, and state agency schools, A6. So our goal is to create the conditions for success wherever a student is served. So an important role of this board is to monitor evidence that those conditions are present. So we certainly appreciate the board's time on these important issues. So we're not a system of individual schools. We strive to be a true system where all the parts are aligned and the parts work together around the needs of our students. The magnet reviewers called it an ecosystem. And remember, they said that one school affects all the others. So the reports we received regarding our magnet and alternative schools look at ways we can make improvements to create those conditions and work to align our work to better serve our students. Baldwin says you cannot fix what you will not face. The challenge is to make data-driven improvements to better serve our students. And I really appreciate the principals that sat in front of us and their reliance on data and their data-driven approach. But speaking of data, remember, we have Vision 2015, and I just want to quickly remind you that we have a dashboard that has the 4 focus areas. Each focus area has a success measure. Success measures have leading indicators. So for example, the goal is increased learning. The leading indicator for increased learning is kindergarten readiness. So remember our kindergarten readiness and the improvement that we saw in 12-13 for kindergarten readiness. On the left is JCPS, on the right is Kentucky at 52.3%. On this dashboard, also, if you look at individual schools, you will see all the schools and the percentage of kindergarten readiness at all the schools and the increase, or in a couple of cases, the decrease. So if you go back to the focus area of increased learning, one of the leading indicators is attendance. Students have to be in school to learn. It makes sense, right? So let's just quickly look, because we've had a bad winter, how our attendance has been. And in this particular case, you can see that the yellow bar, or the goldish bar, is this year. So you can see that in the 6th month, which ended February 27th, we've really improved attendance, except for there was 1 month that we had a rough month prior to February, but we've actually increased attendance. So I'll just quickly show you focus area 3, which is stakeholder involvement and engagement, which is a really important focus area. And we know that parent involvement is important. And I thought it'd just be interesting, and the blue bar is this year, is to show you the increase. And I want to commend the parents for the increase in checking Parent Portal and really keeping up with the achievement of their students. One of the things I'll also point out, thank you, Andy, for doing that, is strategy 2.6. There are 36 strategies in this plan. And I know the board will remember it. 2.6, develop capabilities of students to be effective and happy citizens, learners, workers, and leaders for the 21st century. Very much to Mr. Jones' point about not just test scores, but what kind of people are we nurturing and supporting in our school system. So on April 10th, we'll be convening teachers and principals and stakeholders and community members to actually define what are the 21st century skills, looking at the literature, that we can bring back to the board a list of those so that we can get your approval about saying this is really what we want for the students of Jefferson County. I would like to pull the item on the consent agenda, which is 6A, which is the calendar pending legislation. Legislation has not passed. I never really thought I would say this about this winter, that I am grateful that we only had 11 days out, because some of our colleagues throughout the Commonwealth have had 29 to 30 days out. So we have been fortunate in Jefferson County that it's only been 11 days. And I never thought I'd say this either. We are fortunate that our last day of school is Thursday, June 12th, because that's a better situation than many districts. So what's really important is item 5AA, which are the graduation dates that hinge upon our last day being June 12th. So the wonderful students in the class of 2014 can plan the celebrations that they deserve as they exit Jefferson County Public Schools. So it's 5AA are the graduation dates, with the last day of school being June 12th. So Chair Porter, I present to you the consent calendar.
Thank you, Dr. Hargens. At this point, Mr. Jones, would you do the 7 tie bids for us, please?
It will be my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, first one, lotted item numbers 31 through 33 on bid ID number 6883 for instructional and office supplies. Line item supplement. One draw for one lot. Items 31 to 33, and the lot is awarded to Pyramid School Products. Number 2. This is item 199 on bid ID 6869 for locks and other miscellaneous hardware items. One draw for one item, and the item is awarded to Clark. Number 3. Item 46 on bid ID 6865 for musical instruments. One draw for one item, and the item is awarded to Taylor Music, Inc. Next Item 84 on bid ID 6865 for musical instruments, one draw for one item, and the item is awarded to Interstate Music. Item 97 on bid ID 6865 for musical instruments, one draw for one item, and the item is awarded to Music and Arts Center. Okay, the penultimate tie bid, item 6 and item 96 on bid ID 6865 for musical instruments, one draw for two items. And the item is awarded to Sam Ash Music Corp. Last, item 78 and item 85 on bid ID 6865 for musical instruments, one draw for two items, and the item is awarded to Taylor Music, Inc. This concludes the tie bids.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, very much. Are there any items on the consent calendar that need to be pulled down? Mr. Brady?
Yes, I need to pull down item V.P.6.
Acceptance of the grant from Norton Healthcare?
Correct.
Okay. Any other items, Ms. Westland?
F1.
Courtyard modifications at Ballard? Any other items? Okay, starting with F1, courtyard modifications at Ballard High School. Ms. Westland?
Yeah, I think I talked to you, Dr. Razor, about it, and I see that Mr. Mulhern is back there, and glad this is on here. It's fine, but I did talk briefly to people at Ballard and would like to just ask you, once we approve this, if you would check back in with the school. I know the PTSA is interested in augmenting this, perhaps, and relooking at the particular front entrance part. And if there are any alterations, we might consider after we do this. We may not, but I just want to ask that you contact them again and make sure that everything is a go, and if they have a new idea, that you'd at least consider it.
Absolutely.
Got it? Put it in the minutes, Kathy. Thank you very much.
Razor nodded.
What?
I said Razor nodded.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, moving on to item P6, acceptance of grant from Norton Healthcare for certified athletic trainers at various high schools. Mr. Brady?
Although this grant has to deal with providing the district some money, it also has a component on there where the district would have to put in $120,000 to augment the, I believe, $160,000 that this grant, or $150,000 grant is getting from Norton Healthcare. Norton Healthcare is my employer. Therefore, I'm asking that we pull this item out and vote on it separately, because I'll have to abstain.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item P6, which is the acceptance of the grant from Norton Healthcare for certified athletic trainers at various high schools? A motion. Ms. Haddad, second. Mr. Hathaway, all those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Now, is there a motion to for the acceptance of the grant from Norton Healthcare for certified athletic trainers at various high schools? Ms. Westland, second. Mr. Hathaway, all those in favor? Haddad, Duncan, Hathaway, Westland, Jones, and Porter, and Mr. Brady. Is there abstention?
Abstention.
Mr. Brady abstains. Thank you very much. So that takes care of the consent calendar. The action item has been pulled from the agenda. We have taken care of discussion items A, which is the magnet schools and program review. Item B, report on the alternative school status and recommendations. We moved on to item C, the 2013-14 Board of Education discussion agenda planning calendar. Anything for the planning calendar 2013-14. Ms. Duncan and Ms. Westland.
I just want to remind ourselves that I'm still looking for that plan for the implementation of the energy grant that we have, and the component that has to do with school teams. If there is if we have a plan, I'd love for us to think about getting that on the calendar so we can hear that. I mean, we can save money with this, and then the money can somehow support these schools in a different way, and I just think it's important for us to think about it.
Okay. Ms. Westland?
A couple of things that I'd like the Chair and Superintendent to consider putting on the agenda, and it would be down the road because it may take a while. I don't want to drop big reports and on staff that quickly, but I think it would benefit the board to hear a little bit about the ECE process, placement process. I know there have been some changes and there's been corrective action going on, which I understand it kind of goes off and on, has over time. It's not unusual, but I just think that would be very helpful. And also another one, a whole different kind of report, a little bit about the arts in our schools. You know, we have arts magnets and arts competitions, but it's also really important that our regular schools have art programs. And I just think it'd be great if we had a nice comprehensive. We haven't met. I'm sure not all the staff have met the staff members who oversee visual arts, and we have a new music person, and just kind of a good comprehensive look at our arts in our schools. It'd be kind of fun and important.
Anything else for the discussion agenda planning calendar? Is there a motion to receive the planning calendar with the notations from Ms. Duncan and Ms. Westland to be included? Ms. Haddad, second. Mr. Brady, all those in favor? Vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Board reports and requests. We've done that. Persons. Nope. No, sorry. Board reports and requests. Ms. Duncan, Mr. Haddaway.
I have a couple requests, and again, you know, I'm still looking for any data that we have on restorative practices that shows that restorative practices reduce recidivism. I mean, I think that's the point of doing restorative practice. So I'm looking for that data somewhere so somebody can show us that it does that. And also, I'm looking for data that shows that our SRTs are reducing offenses, disruptions, because our policy talks about plans for getting disruptive kids out of class, and SRTs go into class. And I'm just wanting for us to keep track of this. Are SRTs reducing the offenses? Because that's the bottom line on all of this. We want people to quit doing these things, and if they are, that's wonderful. And if they're not, then we need to look back at our policy again and see if we need to do something else. That's it,
Ms. Westland,
on that request.
Just real quick. Oh,
Mr. Haddaway, and then.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right. I want to thank Butler High School for inviting the superintendent and myself to their celebration recently with the Butler High School Bearettes winning the state championship in basketball, and also found out that day that the dance team had won a state championship, and there was an individual that had done very well in cross country as well and is heading to an Ivy League school. But what was equally impressive of the athletic accomplishments was the academic accomplishments that they shared as well. And I do remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, the Bearettes had an overall GPA of 3.7. So I just want to say congratulations.
And the young man is Patrick Gregory. He's going to Dartmouth.
Right.
Ms. Westland?
This is just a request, and I guess it could have been in planning, but I don't think it's necessarily for the agenda. But I would really like to get an update, Dr. Hargens, on what's going on at Frost and Myers. I know you all talked about it at your community meeting, and neither of these schools are in my area, but they're priority schools, and we've done a lot of attention on innovation and on all these cool things, but the priority schools really need to be our priorities, and I don't I'd like to get an update for all the board on what efforts are being made to and making sure that any great idea, any bold action is brought to us to support you and others in trying to support those schools, because they continue to get attention in the press, and we need to be sure that we're doing everything we can. I want to know that I'm supporting everything that could possibly be done. If it's hard, I want to hear about it.
Well, and I'll just remind you that tomorrow we're getting 3 leadership diagnostic reports: Frost, Stewart, and Academy at Shawnee. So in 2 years, everybody gets a leadership diagnostic reports. Remember, the principals have changed over, so we'll give you that information tomorrow. Right. Frost, 6th grade Academy has a new principal. Stewart has a new principal. She was here today with her students. And, of course, Academy at Shawnee has a new principal.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Ms. Duncan's request for information about restorative practices and all that. I was not aware that the board had a request for data outstanding, but if we do, I'd like to make sure we all get it. I'm also looking forward to the recommendation about how the code of conduct might change. There is a committee going on. My understanding is it is an advisory committee, and whatever those recommendations are will come eventually to the full board for consideration. And I know there's a story in the newspaper tomorrow about that, and the board hadn't even seen it.
Right, so, and actually that's on the planning calendar for June 9th to come to the board, the code of conduct to come to the board.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if I understand correctly, the code of conduct meetings are still in process, so there's not something to hand out at this point. They're still working on it. Ms. Duncan?
I just had a couple of things, reports. I wore my Fairdale Elementary shirt tonight because I attended their international celebration night the other night. It was Thursday night, and where I got to take a tour through the school of all the continents with all the every kind of imaginable display of information that the kids could come up with, plastered all over the walls and down the halls and at the tables. And we had food, and we had people dressed in ethnic attire, and we had music. And after I left, they had the dancers. I missed the dancers, but a phenomenal display on the wall of where all the kids' pictures tied to where they had come from. And so I think that is also one of those magnet schools that's doing very well as far as its international studies magnet is concerned, and the expansion of Spanish being taught in the school. So I was tickled to be there. And then I just wanted to report, I got a message today from Olmsted Academy North. The 20 boys had represented the school in the Kentucky United Nations Assembly Conference, and they went on 2 teams. One represented China, one and came up with a proposal for China, and one came up with a proposal for Spain. And both groups were recognized for their outstanding proposals. And only 8 out of, I don't know how many proposals there were altogether, but I know only 8 were recognized, and they were recognized, both those teams were. And they had the outstanding speaker and the outstanding ambassador at the Kentucky United Nations Assembly. So I was very proud of them, and I wanted to share that with everybody.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. We do have Dr. David Wicks to address the board at this time on a non-agenda item. Dr. Wicks, thanks for being here tonight. I apologize for the lateness of the hour.
No problem.
I think you know the 3 minutes to address the board, 2.5 minutes. The bell will sound once, and you have 30 seconds to finish your statement, and then the bell will sound twice. Thank you very much, Dr. Wicks, for being here tonight.
Thanks. My name is David Wicks, and I worked for JCPS for 30 years as director of the JCPS Center for Environmental Education, and retired 4 years ago. I've stayed active in environmental education and working with folks on the waterfront and out there on Floyd's Fork with Dr. Steve Henry with the Future Fund Board, and with I'm an adjunct professor at U of L. I'm here to speak tonight on a fascinating program that I just passed out called My Actions. It's a new community-wide environmental education program. It was featured at Mayor Fisher's Sustainability Summit at the Louisville Zoo this January. My Actions is a behavior change program that highlights environmentally positive behavior that saves money, protects natural resources, and promotes energy conservation. My Actions program here in Louisville has been adopted by the Partnership for a Green City as a collaborative network. You know, the partnership is a collaborative network between JCPS, U of L, Metro Louisville, and JCTC. And I'm here tonight to encourage you as board members to personally participate in this My Actions program. One of the big pieces of it is saving energy, and right now, from my information, JCPS spends about a bit under $20 million a year on energy-related bills. If you add it all up for the partnership, we're looking at about $50 million a year. Through national research, people say you can reduce that amount by 10 to 20% by behavior change. Right now, the district doesn't have a district-wide behavior change, sort of looking at how we can save energy by turning off lights, closing windows when the air conditioning is on and on and on. So My Actions program really sort of focuses in on that. It's a free project, and the neatest part about it is for every environmental action an individual takes and reports on it, the zoo gets 25 cents. Up in Columbus, they've raised about $250,000. Pittsburgh is almost $500,000. And so it's what it tries to do is to get people, and I'm encouraging all of you to sign up, to look at your own personal habits, to sort of think what you are doing for energy, for local food, for natural conservation, and become a role model in our community for environmental sustainability. We're working with the district, or the partnership is working with the district, and they're laying the groundwork now to roll it out to middle schools and high schools. You have to be 13, so it really is middle school and high school, but it's also for staff. And so I'm just encouraging you all to take a part of it yourself and sort of see how you rate and raise money for the zoo and planting trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wicks. Thank you for being here tonight. There is a need for an executive session tonight, so it is necessary that the Board of Education recess and reconvene an executive session at this time. Do I have a motion that the Board of Education enter into executive session for the purpose of discussions relating to proposed or pending litigation pursuant to KRS 61.8101C of the Open Meetings Act? Mr. Jones, is there a second? Ms. Haddad? All those in favor? Passes unanimously. We will adjourn to the first floor.
Unless there's people still in there, that might be a problem.
First floor conference room if it's available.
Holy crap.